get that started for us. The first one I was looking at was Jukebox. And that was one where we had, let's see, openai.com/blog/jukebox. And with this one, it's a neural net, generates music, including singing. That was the part that was very interesting because you can tell it a style, and it'll try to make words that sound like that style. So it'll try to emulate certain singers, and it's quite interesting how it goes around with that. You can give it a genre, an artist, lyrics as an input, and it'll output a new music sample from scratch.
And a neural net, that is like a wide net of AI.
Yeah. And what we have here is just a few examples of country. There's rock, there's pop, blues rock, heavy metal, classic pop, and each of these has a style that they went with. So, for example, if you're familiar with Alan Jackson, and this would be a country song in the style of Alan Jackson, and let me know how the volume sounds on your side there.
Don't you know it's gonna be alright? Let the darkness fade away, and you gotta feel the same. Let the fire burn. Just as long as I ain't there, I'll be there in your life. I'll be there when the conditions right, and I don't need to call you up and say I've changed. You should stay, you should stay. You should stay tonight. Don't you know it's gonna be alright? Don't you know it's gonna be alright? Don't you know it's gonna be alright when you don't know how to feel? And you're looking for some love, gotta feel the same day. 'Cause I don't need to call you up and say yeah. I don't need you. All you up and say I change. You should stay. You should stay. You should stay tonight.
So that's very cool. The fact that it actually does lyrics, and the hover over the text there was telling you which text the AI is actually thinking about at that moment. So like you'll see it think about the previous line, or you'll see it think about the next line. You can kind of get an idea of what the AI is actually trying to do, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. It's using a language model and the AI to write, to do those words. Did they
Yep.
feed those words in, or
I don't
did
think
the
they fed
AI
those
do
words.
that?
They did, like they talked about all of the stuff that went into it, and there's a lot of technical detail on this page, which is great. It gives you all of the ways that they go about all of this. But the main takeaways that I was looking for were the way that like they take the original audio and then they reconstruct the different levels of the audio, and then they reconstruct it back together. But when they talked about it at the bottom, they had to teach it how to, like, they fed it. Let's see, there were 3 different ones.
And it's interesting that they're very specific with how you compress, and because chances are that can confuse the AI if you use the wrong compressions.
Yep, absolutely. And this part over here was actually a map of similarities. So it
Wow.
actually does tries to figure out which artists are similar to each other. And there's some surprising things they mentioned here, like Jennifer Lopez being so close to Dolly Parton, where if you look down under country and you see Dolly over here, and you see that J-Lo is like right next to her. So as far as styles go, the AI is considering those to be very similar. The other thing I like about this particular image is the fact that if you look at it from the top level over here, you're seeing rock and pop in the middle, surrounded by everything. So you're seeing the similarities of all these different genres. You're seeing hip hop and R&B and reggae, country, soundtrack, classical, jazz.
And they got like Gene Simmons kind of hovering by himself in between rock and country.
Yep. They've got Van Halen, Kiss, Linkin Park. Those guys are all like part way between R&B and pop.
Interesting.
And like over on the hip hop side, you've got a few like the Foo Fighters and Coldplay and Radiohead that are kind of in between, like more on the rock side, but leaning hip hop. You got some hip hop people that are leaning rock and R&B, like Drake, for example. It's pretty cool the way that, and things that are very dissimilar. Like classical is very much not like reggae, so they're not near each other at all, right? And jazz isn't necessarily that much like R&B, so they're not very close together. But there are things like some of these people in pop that are quite far down towards jazz and blues, like Peggy Lee and Doris Day, and then other ones that are near, Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Perry Como are on the pop side, near jazz and kind of leaning out that way. But it's pretty cool just to see how everything kind of fits together and how the AI at least thinks of things. Like there's the Doors that are like smack dab in rock over there. Pretty cool to see where everybody fits together. But
that's what I'm wondering. These associations,
this is a model that it made.
Are they human programmed to say like?
This part here, the top-level transformer is trained on the task of predicting compressed audio tokens. They provide additional information like artist and genre. Two advantages. First, it reduces the entropy of the audio prediction, so the model is able to achieve better quality in a particular style. And second, at generation time, they're able to steer the model to generate in a style of their choosing. And the model that's showing down here is the s01e30 model that shows how the model learns in an unsupervised way, so unsupervised, to cluster similar artists and genres close together. And that's what makes those associations for it to try to add a different style that's similar, nearby, so to speak, in this little map they have. But as far as the lyrics go, that was the part that was down here. The lyrics.
So this is just this is just one model in their AI.
Right. This is just one aspect of it.
Wow.
That's right. And then, in addition to the artist and genre, they can also provide more context by conditioning it on lyrics. And I'm kind of just reading here, so don't mind me. But they do it with, for a given chunk of audio, they don't know precisely which portion of the lyrics, if any, will appear. So it's kind of, it's still somewhat random in terms of they don't know whether it's going to use the lyrics or not, but they know that the AI is aware of the lyrics and can think about the lyrics and knows that it has the option to put lyrics here or not to put lyrics here.
And that really makes this, I was expecting just to see like music style AI, but lyric AI, that's next level.
Yeah, this one is the one that really blew me away, and that's why this is the one that I believe I applied to join the project, and told them a little bit about what we do on BandLab, and we'll see if they respond. But this is one of those things that they are actively seeking people to help train and test and work with the AI, because it's still these things are they're growing up, like they're learning, so they need data to learn,
and they need good teachers. And
BandLab has a lot of data, so when it comes to music and lyrics and everything, we can feed a lot of data from there that they don't have, because they've already fed what they had from the internet, so they already had that data set. But now here's more stuff that they could feed to it that's actually unreleased stuff at this point, but stuff that we could design specifically to work with.
And Angify has a lot of music data.
Oh yeah, for sure. Lots and lots. So sometimes, again, this is the lyric portion, but just to go back up to some of those examples, because those were, hearing the examples was really key to me. Like, that's what really hooked me, was listening to the different examples. Like, we heard the one that was in country style, in the style of Alan Jackson. How about rock in the style of Elvis Presley?
And I like how they explain how they're extracting.
From dusty tanny, almost scarf, but the lip hitch tells the heart. When my toe slips, when my hair was sizzling fine. At last, when he woke up with a mind. Dusty James, when you help him get the tears that kept you right. When he sees he was victorious, listen please. At last, he woke up in his soul. We stand to assist, and we know that we have a heart that never ceases. Let us pray. To some pain of life, for some sea of my sacred life.
So it's definitely, it's obviously not very clear on the lyrics, but the point is that it's doing a pretty darn good job of setting up a vocal line, so that if you did want to sing these lyrics, which again, these lyrics sound quite interesting, going through mitosis and meiosis and waking up with the mind.
Where is it extracting the voice tone for that? Because that sounded Elvis-ish.
Oh yeah, that was Elvis-ish, because that was in the style of Elvis Presley, so it uses all of the data that's available on the internet, everything that they could get that had Elvis's voice, and that's where it trained the AI to use those
wow,
tones.
This is like the voice synthesis we were talking about the other day.
Exactly.
Wow. See,
using a humongous data set to do it.
I can't believe how far they have come with this.
Yep, exactly. And that's why I was very surprised also that it got this far. How about Katy Perry? Pop in the style of Katy Perry. actually jumped around a little bit. If you noticed with the words, it was kind of focusing up at the top there with "I'm the one you want," but it also was jumping down, thinking about "I've been working on my time." So it was kind of bouncing back and forth. We saw like some indecision essentially in the way the
Yeah.
model was going to go. It could have gone this way, it could have gone that way. It was right on the fence, and we saw the result where it decided to dive one way or the other. It's just very cool the way that it actually lets you visualize that just with the where the the focus is on the text on there. It's very
And
cool.
that's a tricky challenge, both for a singer and a computer.
Now, for this one, it was co-written by a language model and OpenAI researchers, so they might have fed, whether it was all the lyrics or some of the lyrics. I assume it was some of the lyrics to give it a nudge or a start, and then it builds off of there. Because some of the others, with a melody, for example, you could take a short MIDI sample of a melody and feed it to it as a starting point, and it would sit there and extrapolate and put piano accompaniment behind it. That's one of the other
Now,
ones we're going to get to.
that's what I'm really excited about. If I can
Yeah.
put in a melody line
Mhm.
and feel out words,
Mhm.
feel out tone,
Absolutely. Especially
even
by
if
saying in a style of, because then you could even write words and have it try to sing it. I imagine we'll have to double check to see, but that should be even easier than having it make up words on its own. Is if you're feeding it some examples of, hey, here's a few lines to work with, and then that kind of gives you the feel of the song and how to work around, some rhyming they can do, some meter that they can pull from there, and all kinds
I
of
could
things.
totally see using this to create a sample melody to give to a singer and
Absolutely.
say, like, this is kind of where I'm trying to go with the melody.
Absolutely. Just really good stuff. And how about Joe Bonamassa, blues rock?
Yeah, good choice there.
Empty for you, but only good for a moment alone. You're the shadow of your eyes, alone you got in that. I will love you wherever you are. We'll never end the day. Wherever you are, a little guide. When I see a sky is over you, ooh, I love you. And know I've been by the phone. I know I can't spend no notion. And you know what worth my life is my soul. And I will love you wherever you are, more than anything. Wherever you are, wherever you are.
And even just the intensity of certain lines, like they're definitely catching on the style of the person that they're trying to imitate, and that can really, like you were saying, give you a really good roadmap to follow if you just wanted to, feed it part of a song. You wanted to give somebody ideas of how to go with it, like if they're singing blah 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 blah. and they're
Well,
bringing out.
it actually thinks about dynamics and
Exactly.
where to hit on the syllables.
Hmm.
Watching it as it lights up,
Hmm.
it's really good at hitting on the notes.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where, again, I have no idea how many levels of training it goes through and how active it is and how responsive it is and how much work went into this particular model, because this could have been just you hit the button and it comes out just like this, or it could be that you had to tweak and massage and change some things to get it that way. I'm assuming it came out kind of just like this. It does say co-written by the language model and the researchers again, so I'm assuming they feed it some of the lyrics to give it an idea. Like the song itself probably is just feeding along in the style of Bonamassa, and then the lyrics, they're giving it a nugget to start with, and then it builds from there. That's my assumption on that, and we'll double check that though. But just
And
very cool.
this can be a great learning tool for like a singer who's trying to learn how to lay their lyrics on top of things.
Oh yeah,
You
absolutely.
can learn from this AI as much as teach it.
Yep, yep. Learning about how it does the timing, learn about when it skips lines, when it puts lines in, when it drags on a word, when it really goes high for the emphasis, like you said, the dynamics. I mean, the dynamics are very good in this, and that's
Yeah,
without even having real words, it's doing real dynamics. So that's where if you have real words, and it'll be that much better.
it's utilizing all the singing technique you would ever use.
Hmm. Yep. Now we're gonna come back to heavy metal, because I know that's the one you want to hear. So first we're gonna do
In the
classic
style
pop.
of Rage.
Yeah. But first we're gonna do classic pop in the style of Frank Sinatra, and we'll come back for the metal for
Oh,
dessert.
a tease for Jason.
Yep.
It's Christmas time and you know what that means. Oh, it's hot tub time. As I like the tree this year, will be in a tub. Oh, it's hot tub time. Next Christmas time. And so no that means it's Maxwell time.
Hot tub time.
Some people like to go steering in the snow, but this is much better than that. So grab your bathrobe and meet me by the door. Oh, it's hot tub time.
It's hot tub time, everybody.
And it's really simulating Sinatra's melody approach.
Absolutely. That's the most impressive part to me is how well it actually is able to mimic certain things from either nonsense text or text that we know that he didn't actually sing. Because I don't remember him doing a song called "It's Hot Tub Time," but
No.
it's entirely possible.
But that's how he would sing though, like where he would hold.
The intonation, absolutely.
Yeah, where he would hold and the way he would swoon is an actual like technique of his.
Yep. And it's just crazy how we can update things to use styles like that when none of this was possible previously. I don't think. Now, what about Rage? What are your thoughts? How is the heavy metal going to sound?
Oh well, we're going to be the fussiest with this one.
This is true. So let's see what they think.
Let's see if a computer can beat Jason.
I put my money on
I
Jason.
still doubt it. Yeah, I will put my money on Jason forever.
There you go. But let's see what we got in the style of Rage, heavy metal. Interesting the way it jumps around for the lyrics there a little bit.
Yeah, I noticed a couple of things there. I feel like that would have been a Father Pat vocal track.
Yeah, definitely.
One thing that's interesting with the metal, especially like when you have progressive parts like that, I can see how it's a little more confused about where to hit on versus the other styles.
Yeah.
Progressive metal, how you approach the vocals, it's still learning, but very impressive.
Exactly. And for that's a pretty wide range of styles they covered right there.
Yeah, and the AI seems to be focused on the music hits to figure out how to approach the vocals. And I think with the metal is maybe its biggest challenge.
hmm And as Uncle Dick says, got a Metallica twist to it.
Yeah, it does.
Now, right here, they do have the code available. They have the paper available. So, I mean, this is all. That's the best part about all this. It's open
What's the
AI.
language? What
It should all be in
language are
Python,
they using?
I believe, but
Oh,
I'm not 100% sure. Let's see. Let's view the code.
we're all going to be learning Python. Watch.
Yeah, I'm definitely already on board because that's what. Yep, setup.py down the
Yep.
bottom there.
Yep.
But
That is Python.
the artwork I was using last week, that art generator AI, that is all Python, and it's not that you have to know Python because I mean, literally, it's press play on this, press play on this, press play on this, and make sure there's no errors there, or walk through the errors. But as far as knowing how to code Python, I didn't know anything to get any of that artwork done. That was all.
Well,
just click.
the beauty
click
of
to make it happen.
Python, Python's not a complex language. Once you know the structure, how you set your command and your variables, it's a very easy language to get used to quick, which is why it's so popular with a lot of this stuff.
Yeah. It's 85% Python, 8% CUDA, Jupyter Notebook, C++, little shell, CSS.
Yeah, see, they're utilizing the languages to tap into the hardware. CUDA with the GPUs, Python both for audio and video, 3D, useful in both arenas.
And PyTorch was being used in the AI art generator as well as over here. Used for the jukebox and used this. But again, not having to know, and like you don't have to be able to code all this stuff in order to use these things. You just have to. It's like your car. You don't have to know how every little thing in the car works to drive the car. Same thing.
Well,
like
if
you can drive this with a couple of clicks, but understanding what's going on under the hood is helpful.
if you look at those samples there, it's basically you're calling a script, and then all those dashes are parameters.
Yep.
And
You got
that's
your
the way
5B
it's
lyrics, your sample
yeah,
5B levels.
that's the way it gets structured. Once you know the parameters that you need to pop in there, pretty easy.
Right here, SR 44100. That's the sample rate, 44
Mhm.
kilohertz. Number of samples, 6. Hop fractions. I mean, a lot of stuff makes sense, and even things that don't make sense, it's like, okay, I can accept that and move on.
Yeah, well, I'm wondering what hop fractions are.
Mhm.
That's probably like the frames, in the graphic AI that we were
Mhm.
looking at, and whether you're sampling like every 5 frames. The hop fraction is probably how the lyric bouncing and its precision,
Mhm.
its bounce. I'm
And they
just
tell you even
guessing,
down
but
here how much memory they each take down here. The HPs for the GPUs, 16 gigs of memory. They talk about the 1B lyrics, the 5B and the 5B lyrics, top level priors, and they take up 3.5 gigs, 10 gigs, and 11 gigs respectively.
and that's about
So,
normal.
not anything
Wait,
crazy.
gigs or
Gigs, but on the server. So again, these are you're using the cores on their side. So this is all the environments, like with the other notebooks that I was using, the Google Collab notebooks. You're hooking into their hardware. So that on our end, we're literally running a web page, and on the other end is where the magic is all happening on the back end.
see, Dick's saying all us rock stars are in trouble. No, you guys are not.
No, definitely
This
not.
stuff will not replace rock stars.
It's not replacing you, but it's making it easier for all of us to do more with what we already have.
Conceptualize,
Yep. Hey, yes, all right.
which is what I want to solve. Like, I have so many things that I want to get out, but it's that initial creation, getting it
Mhm.
from the brain to the keyboard.
Yep. And even just getting something out so that it represents the song, so that it's a placeholder, so that you know to come back to it and flesh it out a little further. I like doing that sometimes, just getting thumbnails of songs out, like just doing a little bit on a bunch of different songs to get things moving, and then whichever one I'm motivated on, I'll jump on that and do the rest of it.
That's what
It's one
I
of those
need to
things.
start doing. I need to have a palette to choose from, and then let my mood pick the plate.
Because some people, they're much more linear. They have one song that is the current song they're working on, and they get laser focused on it. But a lot of times,
That's what happens to me.
if
Yeah.
they get hung up on it for even a few moments, then it can dissuade them from wanting to play anymore. Whereas if they just went,
Or
that
burn
could
you
have
out.
been, or burn you out, where it could have just
Yeah.
been switching to a different song, a fun song, or even not a song, just listen to something random on the radio and play along to it or whatever. Something like that, it can shake you out of that mood and get you, make something inspire you out of nowhere. So sometimes it's good to step away. Sometimes it's good to do other things to, get you past a little block. But I like to have several projects to choose from so that, I know which one I want to focus on. But if I'm either hung up on that one or not inspired or, feeling like I should do something else, I can just jump to a different project and work on that instead.
And you're good at like mixing up your genres and choices. Like
Thank
your plate has a buffet of music.
Yep, there's definitely a lot of things to choose from. And there's always more, because, anything that is forkable out there is fair game. I'm going for it. I see things that don't have bass on them, and I say, mine.
The remasters help me with that. Like, trying styles I never would have done in the past.
Mm-hmm.
It's helped me to understand a lot of genres with these remasters.
Now, how about this down here? Prompt with your own music. If you want to prompt the model with your own creative piece or any other music, first save it as WAV files and then run, and they give you the code right here. And it'll load up to 4 files. It'll tile them to fill up n samples batch size and prime the model with the first prompt length in seconds of seconds. So you can put in WAV files and prompt it and have it go from there. The other one that I was looking at,
WAV is a very standard.
Was talking about MIDIs instead of waves, so that was one where you could just give it MIDI data instead. But this one is waves, which no big deal.
Well, they were explaining earlier how they extract the waves, and they're utilizing several pieces of technology to actually break the parts up in the wave.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Almost turning the wave into MIDI like. MIDI, I could see an advantage in rendering time because it doesn't have to break it apart. It has perfect melodies for each part.
Mm-hmm.
But the way they're breaking waves up these days, they're isolating 3-4 instruments in a wave without a problem.
Right. Now, for anybody who's watching what's on screen here, this is just a whole lot of text, and I'm sure you're not getting all of this right now. It's not important to see everything that's on here. I'm just trying to scan through and find some things that are nuggets to discuss about the way it's doing its process here. But the main point was the way it's working at the top end.
Oh, this is how it trains the lyrics.
And how it trains for lyrics, yep. Lyrics. For each lyric's fine, they linearly align to lyric characters to the audio, find the position in the lyric that corresponds to the midpoint of the audio chunk, and pass a window of n tokens lyric characters centered around that.
And they've done a really great job of like laying out how this AI works, step by step.
And you can do non-English vocabulary as well.
Oh wow, I'm gonna definitely do some testing with this.
Oh yeah.
Especially with foreign language.
Absolutely. And we have several options for that.
You grab like, you take some lyrics, run them through Google Translate, and then run those same words through different languages with the same AI. Can't wait to see the difference.
Yeah. So that is the main overview of Jukebox. That was one of the several that we saw there.
And they use the Google Collab, the same thing as the image AI engine?
I'm not sure if this one did or if it was the other one that I was looking at. I'll have to double check here. The one I have open here is for the music with Transformer is what this one was called, which is also a Python. But it's generating piano music with Transformer, and this is the one I was saying that you could feed it the intro. You can generate, like, if you read the left part here, the table of contents, it's got generating piano music, it's got piano performance language model, it's got the checkpoints, it's got generating from scratch, it's got downloading a performance as MIDI, like once you generate it.
Wow.
You can choose a priming sequence, you can generate a continuation, and in each of those you can upload your own, and with those uploads they would upload as MIDI. This is what I was talking about before, where one of the things I did was to test with some of those song starter nuggets that I had from the other week that were MIDI files that just had very simple 4 bars or whatever of what came up in the song starter, and so it was just random melody lines. So I would just pull whichever was the most melody-like piece from that MIDI file, take that MIDI file, feed it into here, and then see what it would do for an accompaniment to see how well it would work it out.
Well, yeah, the way the song starter gives you those pieces. I mean,
Yep.
I think it was the first track is the melody track, the second is the chord track.
Yep.
A couple of drum tracks and a bass track.
Yep. The interesting thing about this one is it allows you to play with the pre-trained transformer models for piano generation based on music transformer model introduced in 2018. For these models, they were trained on over 10,000 hours of piano recordings on YouTube.
Wow, this stuff is really new.
Transcribed using onsets and frames and represented. And the thing I did is when you looked at the actual how it worked with everything, I think it was on the other page, but these are just some of the view of the MIDI portions. whether it's generating the accompaniment. This bottom part here is what it generated from the accompaniment of what I fed it, which was this little 9-second sample above. But that was a ukulele lead MIDI file that I fed it from one of those song starters. But I think in order to run this, I'm just going to have to redo it from the top here. So let's just, because I think it disconnected from the runtime. So if I tell it to generate from scratch, this is the one. So in this case, there was no seed, nothing that we fed it to start. We just said make a piano piece from scratch, and that's what it came up with. So you notice it's not all in key. It doesn't have very flowing melody lines, things like that. But it is legitimately a piano piece that was made from scratch by AI.
It picks a chord progression that's very common and a go-to.
Yep. Now you can choose the priming sequence, and this is where you can choose a C major scale, a C major arpeggio. You can do clair de lune, or you can upload your own. And that was where I said, "Ooh, I can do what?"
Yes, upload my own.
And that's what I said. And that's where, as soon as I did that, I went ahead and fed it the.
So that's why you were asking me to get those examples. Yes, I will make some.
Yep, exactly. And in this case, like just taking even C major arpeggio is what I did in this case. So I took that and chose that as the priming sequence, and that just says just like that, very simple, C major arpeggio, and then it says generate a continuation. And so it's going to generate music based on starting with that first 1 second of piano that we fed it, and we'll see what it comes out with there.
Isn't there a Chopin song that's got do 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 do?
Oh yeah, there are definitely lots of arpeggios.
Yeah.
And in this case, you can just even see in the wave when it comes out how up and down it all is. So you can see it's just very, very sweeping. I would put it as traveling up and down a whole lot. Let's see what that sounds like. Not bad.
You could use that for like cartoon soundtracks.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, is that's just from an arpeggio. If we had instead chosen the C major scale, we can prime it with that instead. It's probably still going to be only.
Well, and it lets you download the MIDI afterwards. So I mean, you can literally throw it into any key after.
Exactly, and that's the beauty of it also. But it's also easy to learn if it's in C, because then you can just sit there and all white keys on the piano if you're a keyboard player and figure out what it's doing. This is just a 3-second major scale, and then generate the continuation. We'll see what they come up with. Now, in the bottom, we've got melody condition performance model, and that's where we start, feeding it things and having it continue. For this, you can actually download the continuation as MIDI, so you get the primer and the continuation as MIDI.
You're basically growing the song.
And in this case, you can see that major scale right at the beginning there, that nice little sweep up, and then everything else was all generated from that sequence. And you see lots of chunky chords, especially at the end there, a lot of held chords.
And see, this is where like AI, whether you start, say, with a piano part and then add melody afterwards, or you start with a melody and then come up with both are a challenge to me.
Indeed. Let's see how this one goes here. Very
Interesting. Yeah, it's got like a jazz swing.
And you can see how it gets from very simple and it starts adding more layers or adding more parts in there, but it also keeps it constrained somewhat so that it's not just going completely nuts out of the gate.
And I could see how I would modify that. Like if I had that to start with, there's a few parts that I would adjust a little bit, and boom.
Now this is just a setup and load checkpoint, which again is another just press play and move to the next section after it finishes. The idea here is because we'd be able to choose another things like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star or another primer to feed it and have it go from there with the melody.
And this one's not Python. This is JavaScript, right?
I'm not sure actually. It looks exactly like it did with what I was doing in the other.
The code up there, when you see brackets, those little squirrely brackets, that tends to be a JavaScript thing.
Okay.
or C sharp. Languages that use the brackets like that encapsulate their commands,
It's talking about a Yamaha C5 Salamander over here.
and it makes it
.sh2.
notice it makes it easier to see the parameters, like allow soft placement,
Yep.
true,
Yep.
graph options, and then in graph options you see parameters again.
And you're
um,
watching the indentations go through and the
I
nesting
already
and all that. Yeah.
I already know this language, like
Mm-hmm.
this is my most familiar language.
Nice. So he feels like he's all warm and cozy in there, like a warm blanket.
It's just learning the parameters.
Yeah, exactly. All the H params. And then we can choose a melody. So this is where you can do Mary Had a Little Lamb, Row, Row, Row Your Boat, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, or once again, upload your own. And that's where the last time I chose to upload.
And row 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 your boat, around, that's what I
Yes,
was talking about earlier, like
exactly.
being able to turn a song into a round
Mm-hmm.
or a fugue.
Yep.
A melody style that has a defined structure.
Mm-hmm. In this case, if we choose Row, Row, Row Your Boat, it'll show us just a quick little, this is how Row, Row, Row Your Boat looks. And we all know how that song goes. So let's see what it does for the accompaniment. Now I believe that it's going to, keep that as the upper, keep that as the top melody line, and basically try to build a chord structure underneath it. And we'll see if it does, what we would normally expect, or if it just kind of tries to read each note and tries to build a new chord out of each note. That was one thing I was curious about. Not bad.
It filled out the chord.
Yep. Filled
Four
it out nice, and
parts.
you can download the whole thing as a MIDI performance as well, right there. So that's where you can throw things in, get it to do something, bring it all back down, and go with it there. Definitely cool.
Yes, that's another cool one. I mean, between lyrics AI and piano music AI.
Mm-hmm. And this was with the transformer dot. Is that IPYNB? Looks like it.
See, all those who make excuses and say like I can't play an instrument, um, there's no more excuses.
Well, if anybody did think they had an excuse, I think Soulmake just took that excuse away from him, because Soulmake is making entire songs just using his voice, and that's
Yeah.
crazy. I mean, that is awesome. When I saw that the other week, that was very cool. I'm
It,
gonna be doing some bass parts that way myself for sure.
it's one of the most natural controllers that you could ask for.
Absolutely. Just take take a vocal track and boom, doom, 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 and then you feed it into an amp simulator, and all of a sudden you've got nasty metal bass just from that.
It's
If
how
you want.
most of us musicians tend to talk to each other. Lou is
Yep.
always telling me, "Oh, can you play this?" and it does just that. Doom doom doom.
Doom, 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 doom. Yep.
Yes, I can play it. What are the notes? I
Yep.
don't know.
Yep, exactly. And that's, to me, like I always go by ear. So like somebody will tell me, oh, it's C, it's B. It's like they'll read me a book. They'll read me, oh, the song is going to be C and then F and then G, and then it's in the other part, it's going to go A to E, and then it's going to go back to, and they're reading me a whole story. It's like, if you're going to read me that story, just play each chord as a block chord as
Yeah,
you do it. Because if I'm
your
hearing
ears are so good.
C and F and G, if I'm hearing the chords, I can feel where everything's going. But if I'm hearing a list of letters, I'm just glazing over like,
Yeah, sometimes I get lost in the chord explanations. Like, oh, it's a C to a G to a B to an A, and um,
And it's
sometimes
like,
I
don't tell
just
me the
need
grace
to
notes in
feel it
between.
out.
Don't even tell me the grace notes. Like, we can, like most songs, it's going to be 3 or 4 chords in this part and 2 or 3 chords in that part. So it's like we can really easily, go over the whole thing. We can say it's a 1-4-5 in the key of C, and then the other part is going back and forth between the 4 and the 1. I mean, that's
And that
easy.
that's the key to picking it up quick. I think that's why you pick things up so fast. You focus on those chords, trying to get those grace notes and stuff, especially with the metal. Like I'm listening to guitarists riff and I'm like trying to figure out what they're doing.
Yep. Try to
If I
make
could focus on
landmarks.
the chord, yeah.
Make landmarks. Like every time the 1 comes around, what note are they hitting? And like that, try to, like for me with the bass, that's me finding my way into where I should be at the beginning of each measure. It's not always going to be the note they're hitting right then, but you know what I mean. Like you should be able to feel a heavy chord presence at the 1. And
Yeah,
when there's a
and it's
strong
good.
change.
It's good that you take the bass approach because that's the
Mm-hmm.
easiest
Yeah.
of all the different layers that are the natural to pick up.
Mm-hmm.
Bass is like focus on that root note.
Yep. And I do a lot. I mean, some songs I literally play nothing but the root, the 5, and the octave, and like
Yeah.
that's the whole song. Or I'll throw a grace note here and there, depending on what's going on. But for the most part, that's where that's where I'm hanging. I mean, a lot of times you get that 3 in there too, but I mean, for the most part, the root 5 octave is just very
Yeah,
neutral.
yeah. The fifth is, as far as rock and roll goes, you can never go wrong.
Yeah. Doesn't matter if it's major or minor. 1 and 5 are always happy. Always hitting those. As a bass player, that's where you got to get a little bit tricky when you start getting into guitar chords and piano chords and worrying about the third, whether it's a minor third, major third. But if you're just doing root 5, that's where power chords come in. Same thing. It's
Yeah,
just like getting power chords broken up.
that's why the guitar, like usually that's where I try to focus on as I'm trying to figure out the chords. Finding the root note, I think bass. Finding the rhythm guitar, I think fifths. Then trying to figure out what the lead guitar is doing takes me forever.
Yeah, and that's the thing is I've actually, and as you get more familiar with some of these licks and all that, whether it's hearing it or whether it's seeing it, they start coming to me a lot faster. Like a lot of times I play with a number of bands, and a lot of times at rehearsals I'll be watching, or be listening to the guitar player, and whether I'm watching or listening, I can still pretty much figure out what's going on. But a lot of times when I'm watching, I find out that what I was hearing is actually a lot simpler to play than I thought. Where like I'm just watching him and he just shows, it's an awesome line, like, and I'm like thinking to myself, like, it'll take me a million years to learn. But then I watch him, and it's literally just, it's all 4-2 over here. So it's like 4-2s, 4-2, 4-2, and then over here, slide back 4-2, down there 1-3. It's like I can see exactly what positions he's in and exactly what he did, and my fingers do move that fast. I just never put that line to use, and that's one of those things where I just need to add, how they say, talk about 10,000 hours to mastery, and it's not a magic number, not like you get to 10,000 hours of practice and now you're the master. It's more, it's a journey, and the better practice that you do along the way, the more relevant that your practice is to where you are on your journey, the faster you will progress.
And get used to like a guitarist. The more
Yeah.
you play with a certain guitarist,
Oh yeah,
you'll pick up some of their style that way, and
absolutely.
then it gets easier.
Yep. And to the point where at times, like, we'll be playing whatever, and he'll just put his guitar down and come over and kick the bass for me and send me over to the guitar. So because he wants me to start playing some leads, so he like sends me over there to do that, so he can just noodle around on the bass. And because he picked up a 5-string for the studio, so that I don't have to bring my 5-string back and forth.
Oh,
And
awesome.
It feels really good. It's an ESP B15 that he got there, and it was.
When did he get
nothing-
that?
That was maybe 2 months ago, about a couple
Oh.
months ago.
Almost like a Christmas present.
It was almost like a Christmas present, yeah. But it was more that he got. I mean, he got it because he wanted it for himself also at the studio. So it was partly for me, partly for him. It's his bass for sure. It's in the studio. He's got. I mean, this is Joey. He's got 1,000 guitars. He's got 1,000 amps. He's got just ridiculous amounts of gear at his house.
Oh, those are the best friends.
Exactly, and that's where we do rehearsals. And like last week, for example, we rehearsed on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And we skipped a day or two, but we'll get together all the time if we can, just because we all have the time at the moment, and if we can do that, it definitely helps to get together when we can. Do a few hours of playing. We like some of these sessions. We got 3 new songs written in a day. A lot of them are silly songs where it's just scratch lyrics that we just kind of make up on the spot. Usually it's Joey just starts throwing random words out there. Like we did a song the other day called "Squeaky Bed," which is just definitely going to be a hit. But it's one of those that we're still working on it. We're still working it out. But getting like 3 or 4 songs recorded on that Tascam 16-channel recorder, so we're getting good multi-track recordings where we have everything separated. The thing is that they'll all still need to be redone for the vocals and the drums because there is bleed in the room because we're just in a studio together. We're basically in the room doing that, but the bass is direct and the guitar is direct, and the keys are direct if we're doing them that way. But there is some bleed over from the vocals and the drums, but we're putting those those will be replaced anyway. But it's a lot of fun though, and just writing random songs as we do. And I go out to Pennsylvania like I did the other day for getting together with my other band, and I sat down with Pepe and cousin Jeff, and the 3 of us cranked out probably 12 songs, 12 or 15 songs.
That's what I was going to say. Like, you're so comfortable with them at this point, you can crank out 12 songs in one day.
Yeah. And this wasn't even for recording, but this was just kind of practicing stuff. But we've been talking about you've heard some of the stuff that I've done with Pepe and those guys, and there's a wide range to the style. Like sometimes it's more of a Latin style or a reggae style or rock style, depends on what we're doing. In this case, he wanted to start working on some Thin Lizzy songs.
Oh, no kidding.
So, and I didn't he apparently had sent a message or had tried to get a word to me about these songs that we're going to be working on, but I got there and had no prior warning that number one, that we were going to be playing these songs, and number two, that I would be playing guitar instead of playing bass. So that was one of those oh, okay. But I mean, I certainly know the songs. Like we were doing, I want to say, The Boys Are Back in Town, and Jailbreak, and there was
Those
a,
are good ones to,
there was
yeah,
a third
jump
one
in.
or a fourth one. There's a few of them, but since it is a 2 guitar and bass band, normally Cousin Jeff is always on the keyboards, but he is a phenomenal guitar player and a phenomenal bass player. I mean, he can play anything on anything. But his main thing is that when we have, if a song is going to not require keyboards, he'll happily come out and play guitar. So like, I got there, and again, I was expecting to go there and play bass, and I get there, and like Pepe's playing bass, and he sends me over to grab the Les Paul and play some guitar. I'm like, okay. So
Twist
so
my
I'm
arm
playing-
to grab a
twist
Les
my
Paul.
arm and throw in a couple of songs and just kind of figure them out as we went. So we talked about it real quick. Again, talking with Jeff and Pepe about how what the progression is or what we're doing or how it goes. Just real quick, go over it real fast, and then listen to it, play along with it as we do it, and then talk about it again. And then by the second, third time, we're just done. Doesn't even matter if I've never heard the song. By the second, third time, we've got it pretty much locked down to where we know what's going on, at least in the different sections of the song, and can just figure out general structure. And all of us, because of the fact that we've worked on a lot of songs in like a piecemeal fashion like this, where we're just doing we don't even have the drums down, but Jeff will just put on one of the rhythms in his keyboard that he has there, the stage piano. He'll just put in one of the, put in a rhythm from there, or we have a drum machine, or we have other options for that too. But just get something to keep the time, and then he'll just start playing keys. I'll start playing bass. Pepe starts playing guitar.
And again, their groove. Like you've
Yeah.
jammed with them for so long that their groove.
Yep, it's been over 10 years in both bands, and at one point with Pepe out in Pennsylvania, it was literally every Saturday for at least 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Every Saturday we were out there rehearsing. Got a little bit slower, of course, over the last couple of years, but we have still been trying to get together as much as we can. And with Joey and them, we used to get together less frequently, but now over the past 2 years, we've been getting together when we can. We'll get together every day, but sometimes it's it's usually at least 3 times a week, if not 4.
Well,
And it's been keeping everything really, keeping the fingers really greased up, I guess, like ready to go, because I'm playing so much every day.
it definitely helps when you have musicians that you spent time with and gotten comfortable with. The writing energy there
Yeah,
can be.
definitely.
I mean, it's nice when you get somebody new and you have that fresh energy. Like I've jammed with people right off the bat. It's like, whoa, you're cool to jam with, but it takes time to get used to your musicians to really write the albums.
Yeah, definitely. And everybody would have to have, whether it's everybody has the shared combined vision of where an album goes. And again, some of this comes back to old school thinking versus new school thinking, whether it's about the album and whether it's about getting a demo and putting it in someone's hands, or whether it's about just making music and putting it out online. I mean, there's a number of different ways to do this. And one thing is, most of the people that I work with in most of the bands are old school. Like, they've been doing these things for over 20, 30 years each. So that, to them, it's all still get the tape, and I'll bring it over to the guy at the studio and hand it to him, and he'll play it. Like that's kind of where they're coming from in the mentality, and that's why I'm trying to be the technology consultant essentially for the bands, where like I'm the one who is working with Studio One, and I'm working with Cakewalk, and I'm working with BandLab, and I'm trying to get everybody up to speed on all of this stuff, because it's great stuff. And the more we get into it, the more they get into it, the more they see what they can do with it, and the more it opens doors of creativity to do more with it. And that's what I'm trying to do, is to get everybody more comfortable with the tools to do more in the time that we have, because we have the better tools.
Yeah,
That kind of
you're bridging the music approach that they're used to with the technology approach that we all have to get more used to.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is I'm quite lucky to be in the position that I'm in, because when I did join essentially both of these bands, I wouldn't have even called myself a musician. I mean,
Oh God,
I hadn't touched.
you are a musician.
Well, of course, now I say I am. Yes, of course. But I did take piano lessons as a kid, but that was for 10 years or whatever, and I never touched keyboard again until just these past couple of years, where I've started doing more with both bands on the keys sometimes. For guitar, I kind of noodled on guitar over the years, but I only knew minor pentatonic scale and 2-3 songs for decades. That's all I had for guitar up until I started with these bands. And the reason I really got into these bands was Cousin Jeff. Cousin Jeff had played with all these guys. He'd toured with Pepe and those guys in the past, and they were looking to get the band back together. Pepe had always been the bass player for the band for decades. He was a professional bass player. He wanted to step out front and sing and do lead guitar. So he started this band, and they needed someone to cover the bass, but all the songs were already written. All the bass parts were already written, and they were awesome. So I was able to, like, on the first day of practice, they were able to hand me a CD and like, hey, here's 9 or 10 of our songs. Work on these for the next couple of weeks, and we'll start working on them. So I was able to basically jump right in and get a leg up and start in his
it's
style.
it's nice that you're flexible like that, because not all bassists or not all musicians will jump into that scenario and learn their parts.
Hmm.
Sometimes you'll have a musician who wants to change it simply so that it's theirs.
Sure. Absolutely, and that's one thing that we've always talked about in with this particular band, with Jeff and with Pepe and with Joey and with those guys and with everybody. It's it's all we're all in it for the project. It's nobody's oh, this has to be this way or this should be that way. Like, everybody's welcome to their opinion, and we're all certainly welcome to have input on how everything goes. But when it comes to we would discuss it out and we would all agree on how it's going to go. There's nobody is telling anybody how something is going to be. It's a conversation, and we all
And
agree together.
you wouldn't try to shove like a bass part in there that's out of key or like
Right. Right.
out of time,
Mhm.
unless for some reason it fit.
Yeah.
And
And
if
even
it
there, if
did,
it's
you,
not if
you'd
it's not
have
in the
to you'd
vision.
have to convince them like
Mhm.
this is a cool new direction.
Yeah, and even there, again, I would probably more just make sure that we all are on the same page. Whether if they don't like the part I did, I will happily redo my part. I am never that attached to any of my parts, and I say that like with anybody that I collaborate with, and anybody that I will collaborate with in the future. Here's a little hint about me: is anytime you can tell me to change my part. Like, if you want it simpler, you want it more complicated, you want me to go nuts, you want me to make it quieter. I mean, any of that kind of stuff. Doesn't have to be, you don't have to specifically tell me to change this note to that note, but you can just give me any kind of general direction that you'd rather see it go, and I am happy to redo it. Just because, for me, it should fit what you wanted for the song. If I'm forking something, I kind of do what I think should be there, and then I throw it out there. And usually I get good responses from that too. Like, people love when I put stuff on in forks. But it's, again, just because I've been doing this for a long time, so I kind of I have a feel for how things or what would be the right type of part to put in. But I'm definitely not always right. I mean, there are times where I'll put something down and like I hadn't put a part down in a couple of weeks, so I put one down and thought it was great and everything. And the next morning I go back and I listen to it. I'm like, oh, what am I doing? I'm like, it was just way too busy, and it was just I was too excited.
Well, I
And
like
when I
I
was
like
playing.
how you flesh out your parts. You
Thank you.
don't just like slap it down and say I'm done.
Mhm. Yep. I like to go through, like, the first time I'll go through, I mean, I'll put a song on repeat at first and just hit play. Or the first time I'll just put it on repeat and just listen, for the first couple times through the song, just to get an idea, kind of take note of where my ear hears something going weird. Like, I can tell, I can hear what a 1-4-5 sounds like. I can hear 1-5-6-4. Like, I know what these kind of movements feel like and sound like. So I can very easily jump into a general progression like that. But of course, if things start going wacky and all over the place, that does make it a little bit more difficult to follow. But that's where I'll have it on play a few times until I got a solid idea of how it's going. Then I'll just record it, and that's almost never going to be the final thing. But that recording there, I'll try several different things. I'll make it busier than it should be. I'll try different patterns. I'll try throwing in random notes that aren't even in the scale, just to see
Yeah.
how it feels and how it plays against what's going on, so that when I listen to it back the next couple times, I can say, okay, I like that part, I don't like that part, I like that part, and I really like that part. And that way, when I go through the next time, I can say, okay, I'm going to make it all like this with a sprinkle of this and a little bit of that,
And
just to try to
that's
get the right thing.
that's what listening in that case is all about. Like hearing what you do like, hearing what you don't like, and then fleshing it out.
Hmm. Yep. And thinking about the other people in the band and what are they going to think about it. If it is a band project or something that I'm working on with somebody else, see what they did as an initial direction, take that as the cue. I mean, kind of like the AI, take the initial settings and say, okay, this is what we have, this is what I can add, and let's see whether I should add a lot, should I add a little, should I add quietly, should I make it a build. And even today, I hadn't done a lot of songs in a while, and today I worked on 5. So I haven't released any of them, but I got parts down at least on 5 songs. And one is pretty much done, and the other 4, one might actually already be released. The other 4 are still in progress, but I felt good about being able to get a bunch of stuff down after not being able to focus on music in a while. It's not that I haven't been able to, it's just that every time I've sat down to
Catching
try,
up.
yeah. It's one of
I
those
mean,
things.
December and
Mhm.
early January like this, it's been hard to catch up with the music. I'm still in November as
Mhm.
far as
Yep.
my music goes.
But I just decided to just fire off a couple, like some projects that I'd been invited to, and a couple that were just forks that I had picked up over the last couple weeks. Just whenever I'm looking through my feed and I see something that's nice and that's forkable, I'll grab it. And whether it's to put on, whether it's to put something on for bass and release it, or whether it's to put something else on for vocals or guitar or keyboard, or even just to relax. Oh, I guess it did come out because Snave is telling me the one I did with Chuck sounds awesome. That was the one. I did that one earlier today. That was
Thank you,
the one
Snave.
that's out already. Thank you, Snave. And that one was Chuck Z and me, yeah. And that's so that's one of the ones I did today. And some of the others were just, again, forks that I'd picked up. Let's see, one was Sarah Cleary, I think I mentioned. And what was the other one?
Yeah, I like what you added on that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And again, it's just me, adding some bass parts today, and going through that. And so, hit me up if you guys want bass parts. Always, I'm always open to collab. I try to be as open as I can for that stuff. Sometimes I get busy, so if it's not for a couple of days, that's one thing. But I'm always happy to try to work on anything. Fun stuff. For this one, actually, I realized that I had the other pages open still as well. For the Music Transformer, that's the one that we were just looking at. And this one has some more info, kind of, about how it reads forward and is able to do long-term structure. That was one of the big differences there, where it was long pieces of music, having problems with that because a lot of times they're giving examples where
It's really interesting how these different AIs have different mentality in what they're trying to accomplish. Long pieces of music is a challenging problem.
Yep. And actually, somebody's asking if I like the metal. And actually, one of the songs that I'm working on right now is a metal song that is needing a bass part. And that was with,
Jason says we live the metal.
Live the metal.
We do.
But yeah, that one is
every night.
It's an Iceman
It's
track.
Monday every night.
It's an Iceman track that somebody put vocals on, and I'm going to go ahead and add some bass to it because it felt like it could use it. But just one of those things. I'll get to it, and I'll definitely do more metal. I have been kind of fleshing out the metal feeling because that's one of those things where some of it is a tone thing, some of it is a playing speed thing, and it's not that I can't play speed, the speed that would be required for metal. It's more figuring out the proper intensity for a particular song or what have you, and that's just listening. And so that's just me throwing on more metal and just picking up my bass and just kind of
and that's actually more important in metal than a lot of the other genres. Metal has a lot of dynamics that some of the other genres take for granted.
Yep. Jason was showing us somebody was it yesterday or the other day, somebody who was streaming on Twitch, and he's a bass player for, I don't remember which band it was, unfortunately, but is one of the bass players for several bands, and he's just streaming on Twitch, just going nuts on the bass, and he's busy talking to the audience. Hey, thanks for the donation. While he's flailing away on the bass, I'm like,
yeah.
Wow. I'm like, it is not easy to talk and play normal bass, but it's really probably not easy to play that kind of bass while talking. So that would be the kind of thing, though. Just throw that kind of thing on, and I don't have to see the hands. I just have to hear what's going on and kind of get myself into that. And I find myself playing a lot faster than I ever thought I could, just because my ear is kind of going, and I kind of put the hands on autopilot and go from there.
Oh, and we are definitely getting pushed to play faster with all these Angify members.
Oh yeah, and I don't mind. Bring it.
Bring it. It's one of the parts of my playing that I really want to improve on.
Mm-hmm. I think with this particular one, they were giving us some examples in the beginning of ones that were trying to do long-term structure but weren't really hanging on to it. It's like they kind of forgot about the whole.
Now this one says it's an attention-based neural network.
Right.
I'm curious as to what the attention-based means.
A new algorithm for relative self-attention. Dramatically reduces the memory footprint and can scale the musical sequences.
If you think about programming AI to pay attention, this is something humans are going to need to relearn. Our attention spans suck these days.
That's for sure. I blame TikTok.
Programming a computer to pay attention, that's an interesting challenge.
Mm-hmm. And that's where here's a 48-second one where they're self-referencing.
Especially for long-term songwriting.
And you can actually see what it's looking at.
I love how that's representing those circles.
Exactly. It's thinking back. marks are showing which notes in the past are informing the future.
That is a real cool way to display it. I mean, that could sound busy to some
Mm-hmm.
people, like,
Yep.
those are busy chords going
Mm-hmm.
on at certain parts. But at the same time, they're parts.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And a lot of times it's a motif, and it's going to try to continue back to it. Oh, and here's a primer from a Chopin Black Key Etude.
You break that piano up into several different instruments, it's not going to
Mm-hmm.
be so busy.
Yep. And that's also, I think, one of the reasons why they decided to start with just piano was to try to simplify things out as much as they could, because piano has a very wide range. You can do a lot of things with piano, chord-wise, melody-wise, everything.
And it's very easy to hear the chords. Like,
Yes.
when you're trying to listen to the arrangement and the construction,
Mm-hmm.
a piano or a guitar, you can focus on that.
Mm-hmm.
Once you start mixing in several instruments to play different parts of the chord, orchestration is a whole nother level.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, Chopin's Black Key Etude. This is just a little tiny piece for the primer.
Chopin, good pick.
And that is a good piece for it, too. And then the continuation, you can see it gets very busy and has a lot of held chords in the middle. And this is the performance RNN. Now, with this one, they're going to actually do it with several different. This is what I was talking about earlier, where this one, the model seems to forget about the primer almost immediately. And then the other models are able to generate music that sounds plausible at longer time scales. Like these are good at continuing something on a short term, so it can do a few more seconds based on whatever it just heard. But after a few seconds, it starts to get very haywire. And this is where it's going to show us a couple of different ways in which models kind of go haywire. Mm-hmm.
So this AI is really trying to transition into other parts and things off of the initial motif.
With this, I think that was this is the evolution of how they've started going. Like they started with this performance RNN, but then they see that, well, the time, like it starts to lose the primer pretty early, so they had to go a different direction with it. So they have this vanilla transformer and how it works, but it also seems to completely lose, because they give it half of a piece as
Yeah,
a
look
primer,
at the
and then it's
difference.
just completely, you can see it's total gobbledygook on the second half. So it's definitely not going to sound like the first half.
Well, the question is it gobbledygook? Does it
Exactly.
complement the other parts? Because
Exactly.
when you listen to all this progressive metal we've been listening to, there's a lot of parts in one given song.
Absolutely.
And sometimes it feels like you're all over the place.
With
But
these,
if you really go look at the parts, they're
Mhm.
not actually all over the place.
we can see how the primer is literally just that first tiny little bit on this performance here. It's just because the primer's above there, you can see it's just that little bit of notes. So if we start that down here, we'll see what that one does. Now,
Interesting.
certainly interesting piano music, but definitely not closely related to the primer.
Well,
Right?
that
I mean,
would
that
work in
was
a Looney Tunes cartoon for sure. And
well, sure.
notice how the tempo shifted
Mm-hmm.
towards
And
the
the
last
intensity,
part.
and the intensity was just completely different. With instead of all the fast staccato notes, everything went to all held chords and stuff. Definitely, an interesting choice on its part. But you can see it definitely strays far from the primer. So that's one that they were mentioning, saying that was that was the one performance RNN, and it forgets about the primer pretty quickly. And as a consequence, it is unable to generate coherent continuations from a primer.
And this is them recognizing like how the computer's learning and
Yep.
where its challenges are.
Yep. So they went to a vanilla transformer.
See, that
And
happens to me sometimes. I'll start with a riff or a part and then try to find parts to change to.
mm-hmm.
And next thing I know, I forgot what I started with. I
Exactly.
lose my original riff.
Yep, and that seems to be what's happening here, where it's probably, as it's looking back to the newer notes that it just generated. So it's kind of, instead of going with the same format essentially that it had originally, it just kind of started drawing anything it wanted and then
It wants to
referencing
change.
that, and then
It
referencing
wants
that
to
the new stuff.
change. That
So
is
it was just
cool.
changing and then changing the changes to change the changes more, and it's just getting further and further afield. But this vanilla transformer, it was trained on half of the sample, so like the whole first half is the song itself, and then you can see that it just completely shifts immediately and does another, same kind of thing as the last one. But let's just,
Also, it's how much they train on the sample.
and it is when they trained a whole half of it, and they're still saying it. Even if you train it with the first half of the piece, it still
It
goes
still
kind
wants
of
to
immediately
change.
wonky. with this vanilla transformer.
This is fascinating.
And obviously far from where we started.
And you know, composers did this too back in the day.
Yep. Now with the music transformer, on the other hand, it's able to continue playing with a consistent style. So basically, with this one, it looks like they only primed it with that initial motif, because you see how different it is from that first half of the piece up above, where there's a whole lot more descending and ascending parts here. And also, what I really liked is, if you notice the little mountains in the display here, as they're coming down the mountain, like you see that they're all held notes, but it's kind of like, you'll hear it when it gets to that part, but it's as if you're holding down several notes, but you're sweeping into them. You're like hitting 5 notes all and then letting go at the same time. You'll hear it when we get there. But this is the primer is only this first little few seconds, and then the rest of the piece was made by this transformer.
That's to produce a hit at the right time.
Yep, and they also gave us 2 more underneath this, where it takes that same primer and it takes them for a completely different spin. And these are really cool examples, because this is 3 different examples that really sound very interesting. Let's start with this first one.
So the music transformer, this is where they're really kicking in the AI now.
Yeah, this is basically, they were saying, here's the problems they had with the performance RNN, here's the problems they had with the vanilla transformer, and then here's how they, not how they fixed it, but here's what it's like after it was fixed by, a different model, essentially.
Well, how they're telling this computer artist to, like, stay in time, stay in theme.
Yep, and basically just putting their finger on the scales of the weights just a little bit so that it'll stay more towards the theme and less towards the improvisation side, things like that, like finding where that healthy balance is to get what it is that you're looking for there.
It's not much different than the human challenge.
Absolutely. But let's see what he does. Certainly much more consistent, I would say. I mean, definitely not staying just on that theme. It definitely varied from the theme, but it definitely kept the theme in mind from what I see.
Yeah. It kept the flow all the way through.
Yep. And then if you took that same primer and fed it the same exact thing, and it just takes it on a different direction. So instead of that, we have this.
I'm thinking birdie. Very cool.
And the dynamics. I mean, just the fact that it's got that thin and sparse, and was able to get that much dynamic range out of it. It really had a lot of emotion to it in my eyes, and that's
it
what
started
really
to.
surprising.
The computer started to have fun
Exactly.
as it was trying to find like what bass to hit versus the highs and the bounce.
Yep. And these don't give you the visual representation like that first one, which I really do like, that visual representation of the notes, the piano roll essentially.
But,
yeah,
I want to know what they're using to do that representation. I'd like to use that.
Yeah, it's very cool. I'm sure we can find out on here. Here's the third example of using that same music primer from the Chopin Black Key Etude.
Oh, listen to how it's shifted into the etude.
Yep, it found its way.
And then right back.
Yep, returning to the motif.
That is cool.
And then they give us 3 that are unconditioned samples, where they gave it no primer and they just said, make music. So this is where the computer should really be having fun, because there's nothing that it's trying to keep in mind other than what it knows of music in general.
It's like getting to ask a child what they think about music making if they actually already knew like everything.
Yep, it's like the fingers. It's more like somebody who was a phenomenal player, got amnesia and doesn't remember, but the fingers can all do it. So
Yeah.
that like it can do anything, it just doesn't know what it should do. Kind of like that.
And then you feed it a little bit and see what it does do.
What it does with it. Yeah, that's what's great
Yeah.
about it. And in this case, we're feeding it nothing, and we're saying, hey, what do you think? What would you like to play?
Wow, it's got some really great ideas.
Indeed. Beautiful.
Again, you hear a lot of Chopin in that.
Indeed. I think a lot of that comes from that 10,000 hours of piano music that they fed this thing. So it should have essentially an enormous library of classical music, and kind of like with my own personal library having so much Fish and Grateful Dead that if I put all of my stuff into a playlist and hit random, I would get a lot of Fish and Grateful Dead showing up.
Oh yeah,
In the
can
same
you
way.
imagine the AI feeding that?
Exactly. So this thing's been fed so much classical music that, think about the weights that it's going to give different things. If it does do weighting based on how many songs that it sees or how many examples it sees of certain types of things. So if you feed it tons of Chopin, it's going to have a Chopin-y style. Or if you feed it a lot of
Yeah.
Liszt, it'll sound more like that. You feed it a lot of Rachmaninoff, it's going to sound more like that. But
I
do love
like
the
that.
fact
I like that I can recognize some of the AI's what
Choices.
it does know. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's what's awesome. And for me, that's where the non-primed examples are the ones that I was most interested in, because that's where, the ones that it can do in certain styles, that is awesome. The fact that it can mimic, and the one that was doing the vocals, incredible. But this one, just the fact that it is able to, whether it's got a primer or not, generate something that is very listenable and is very identifiably based on that motif. Like that whole song, like it was all improvised, it was all different, but it all can be traced back to what we fed it at the beginning, which is awesome.
And the way it thinks, these failure samples that we see coming
Yep.
up,
Yep.
what you consider a flaw in,
Exactly.
if I hear a note that's out of pitch, I guess I call that a flaw, unless that note is supposed to be out of pitch. Sometimes they are.
Yeah, on
And
purpose, yeah.
look at what they're talking about: too much repetition, sparse sections, jarring
Jarring
jumps. Certain soundtracks, horror movies, it's all about sparse sections and jarring jumps.
That's where it's a failure if you're trying to make it sound like Chopin, but it is not a failure as a piece of music, because those things are all perfectly valid. As you said, there's a place for each of those things.
Yeah.
And it could well be that these are them. But we'll get to those in just a sec. The failure samples were more, like you said, they had clear flaws, so it's not as good as some of these. I'll just do short bursts of these ones from the unconditioned samples just to see where we go with those, and then we'll jump to the failures.
Well, these unconditioned ones feel very natural.
Yeah, exactly. Like they're just experimenting and just kind of reaching, flowing essentially with the music.
It's probably how Bach or Beethoven sounded while they were fleshing things out.
Yep, noodling around. Yeah, absolutely. definitely some recognizable style in there.
I hear a lot of Verdi.
Yeah.
Going like from the lows all the way up to the highs arpeggiated like that.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
It's really good at doing it.
It is. One last unconditioned sample, and then we get to the failures.
And that's a key to that classical style.
Yeah. This one sounds dark, a little mellow.
It's like the difference between Italian compositions and Russian composers.
Nice.
This would be a Russian composer.
Excellent timing.
And it really does accent the chords nice in this one.
It almost sounds silly to say it's playing with feeling, but it really feels that way.
Well, the way it's shifting between like bright and dark chords, is giving it that feeling. That had a nice blend of dark and bright.
Indeed. There's actually a whole minute left to it, but we don't have to go through the whole thing. That was a good, solid chunk of the example. And just again, to me, if I heard that, if I was walking through a mall somewhere, I would be trying to find where that piano was to watch the person play, because it sounds like they're playing with such feeling and emotion, and the spacing of the notes is just right. There's the shifts in timing. It's not always not metronome locked, robotic. It's very emotive to me.
You know that girl that you showed me that studies emotion in music?
Yes, Nare Sol, yes.
Yeah, I bet you this kind of AI approach and that mentality,
Absolutely.
they're merging.
Yep. She's awesome too. And Nare Sol, yeah. She has the ones that I liked in particular of hers were ones where she took a whole separate genre that was not her wheelhouse, so to speak. Like, she's a classically trained musician, and she would go to like bebop and say, here's bebop as digested by a classical musician. And she would just dive in deep and just do a lot of research on it, and then play a bunch of examples and go through what makes a bebop song bebop. And then at the end of it, she would compose an original song as a bebop song, and see how her journey has gone. And she did it for blues. She did it for just any genre you can name. That would be plausible to play on the piano. She basically dove into and checked out and made one of these. And then again, she was like Tony was saying, there was one where it was about the emotions, whether it's a happy song or a sad song, and just diving into how to express those things. But one of the best things about the about her channel was also in the style of, because that's exactly what this AI is talking here. She does a lot of ones in the style of, like, playing songs in the style of Chopin, or in the style of Mozart, or in the style of Bach, whoever. And just as she's doing the video, like when she composes a song at the end that is in the style of that person, after she dives deep on what characterizes a song or what would identify a song as being that style, she not only does a song in that style, but does basically pop up on screen to show you, like, oh, here's the the high ascending phrases, here's the repetition of the root, here's the whatever, like any of those aspects that make it definitively that person, she'll pop up on screen to tell you what she's using as the things to make it in that style at the time, which is awesome.
And characteristics is the key word there.
Yeah.
If you understand the characteristics of a style, of an artist, Bach had certain characteristics, Beethoven had certain characteristics, very different, making music around the same time.
but clearly identifiable. Like if you listen to enough classical music, you can definitely say, yes, that is this one, that is that one, that is this one, and be able to pretty definitively put people in boxes. There are some that have similarities to their styles because some came after others and based their styles on them. But
Well, it's easier when you're looking at, say, genres. Like a genre is easy to define characteristics. When you're looking at different artists in a genre, that's trickier.
Yeah.
You really have to like listen.
as we saw by the AI map that was showing, where certain people are. You could have a whole genre that has people all over the map. Some of them are closer to jazz, some are closer to pop, some are closer to R&B or whatever.
Dolly and J-Lo somehow are connected.
Who'd have thunk of that, right? But something, whether it's about the song writing or whether it's something in the timbre of the voice or what have you, I'm not sure what they would be considering it there. But that is definitely good stuff. Let's see what the failures look like. So these are the ones that could have too much repetition or sparseness or jarring jumps. And there's just
I'm curious what they consider failures.
Failures, yes. I'm sure they'll be still quite good. There's your repetition.
Okay, I can see that. Yeah, but I
Yep.
wouldn't call that a failure
Yeah,
for
exactly.
for a long song AI that's designed to do that for a long period of time. I don't know if I'd call that a failure.
Yep. Basically, it was more that it didn't kind of fit into what they were considering, a successful, rendition of something. But at the same time, they even mentioned it just had so much character and dramatic arc that they thought they'd include them just for fun.
Yeah, you can't ignore it.
Yeah. And here's the second one. It's a little bit shorter.
Oh, and this is the sparse and jarring jumps.
And I was going to say that's a chase scene.
Yeah.
Here's the sparse. And the villain comes out. The damsel in distress. Yeah, a lot of emotional content.
I'm
even
glad
for what's
they
considered a
added.
failure.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I'm glad they added that as a category there. I don't consider it a failure. That's actually what I sound like when I'm learning a scale.
Yep. I see Ange fluffing up that pillow over there, so we're getting close to pumpkin time. I love Tom the cat.
But wait till she puts the pumpkin head on.
Yeah, there you go. Now they also have conditioning sequences so that they can provide a musical score for the model to perform.
See, now this is where like some jobs might get taken in the future.
Yeah.
I could see directors going to an AI to make a score because humans are tough to work with.
Or because they don't want the expense of, hiring a bunch of musicians. I mean, there's a number of different reasons why.
Limited budget, yeah. But at the same time, if that AI is learning from real musicians, then your challenge as a real musician is make something for the AI to learn.
Now, this one is taking Twinkle Twinkle Little Star with chords unspecified. So they had two examples from that, 18, 20 seconds. Nice.
They
Did a good
totally
job.
dolled that up.
Yeah. They have a second example of the same type of thing, a little bit, 2 seconds longer.
That star is twinkling.
Big time.
See, now that's Mozart-ish.
Yep. some outside notes. Nice. This one I can't wait to hear. This is an example where they train the music transformer to map heuristically.
Heuristically? What does that mean?
And they trained it to extract the chords from Hotel California. Let's see what we get here. RJS, they do Gilmore-ish. Just not so much.
Everybody does Gilmore-ish.
But not everybody does Gilmore-ish like RJS does Gilmore-ish.
Oh,
That's
true.
for sure.
The Floyd is strong in him.
The Floyd is strong in that one, yes. And they're in the process of releasing the code for the training and generating with the transformer, and they can even use the relative attention functionality already. So like they're giving you all the stuff that you need, and they've got the archive paper right here. As a bonus, I like this one at the bottom here. As a bonus, one of the former
Yeah,
interns,
I'm familiar with Piano Genie.
Yep. He's the creator of it, and he liked one of the samples at the top so much he decided to learn to play it himself. So he did a video of him playing music generated by an AI.
See, and this is where the inspiration goes both ways.
Exactly.
We will teach this AI, and this AI will teach us.
And it's important to see both sides.
Uh-huh.
Very cool.
Oh, wow, they've got this tied to wave to MIDI to wave, huh?
Yep.
That's another one that I need to look into.
Mm-hmm. Their opening sample resynthesized using a WaveNet model from the Wave to MIDI to Wave project.
Yeah, all these different models. What you're seeing is all of these different code and model mentalities coming together.
Mm-hmm.
This is built off of multiple code, multiple people thinking together.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I mean, look. Look at all the people involved.
That's just for the blog post. Yep. And this was a neurally synthesized.
Well, I heard the page turn.
I heard it. Yep. I was listening for it and I heard it. Very nice.
And they even give you the piano that he's playing from the samples. That's very cool.
Yep. Lots of good stuff. That's where it is. The Alexander Holmes Salamander piano samples. All in all, very interesting stuff on here, and just the visualization was one of my favorite parts. The results were my favorite part, but the visualization and the fact that you can see what it's thinking about was very cool.
Yes, I do want to find that visualizer right there because that one is crazy cool. Oh, music transformer? No, that's what we're looking at.
Right, the whole thing.
Yeah, they don't mention what they're using for that visual here, huh?
I'm sure they do somewhere here. We'll have to look into it here. Let me see what else we had from them. We had getting started with them. This is where ready to play with Magenta, and you can just go right in. If you're a musician, they give you Magenta Studio right here with the music plugins or neural synthesizer or MIDI-enabled web applications.
Oh, nice. They have like software ready to download and play with.
Yep, and if you're an artist, you can do the Sketch RNN demo or Quick Draw dataset to see what you can build. So this is both art and music on the AI here.
And
I like.
these guys are cool.
That is true.
I mean, that's three totally different approaches to AI there.
Yep. And each will have its benefits. Each will have its drawbacks. But figuring out which things are good for which aspects of what we're trying to do, that's where because you can always use this one for this part, use that one for that part, use this one for this aspect, use that one for that song. Different things for different things.
There's different things to learn from each one, whether it's songwriting or performance playing, or coming up with an out of the box like approach to something.
This is right where you get to the collab notebook. So that was the collab notebook we were in a minute ago when we generated those. The link for that is right here under the magenta tensorflow.org piano transformer. And this is where it explains visually the 10,000 hours of YouTube videos that it got. It took the onsets and frames, converted it to MIDI, went to the melody condition transformer where you can give it your melody to get the condition samples, or get the unconditioned transforms and samples from scratch, or feed it the primer and get continuations.
And when people are wondering how like YouTube AI figures out what it does when it's listening to music, some of this is related.
Absolutely.
That is how that AI works when it comes to breaking down audio that it's listening to, and then figuring, oh, this piano part came from this, as it isolates it.
And they, at the bottom, they encourage you to play with the transformer models using the collab notebooks. That's what we were doing before with the row your boat. And they also tell you to share your creation with a Made with Magenta on Twitter. So anybody who wants to...
Totally. If I do anything with this, I will be happy to put that up.
Exactly.
Because this is cool.
That helps them. It helps them. It helps us. It's all part of Google AI. We're helping to train and help create and work with the AI and figure out what we can do with it. That's we can do art, we can do music, and I'm loving both. I mean, I spent some time over the past week making a bunch of artwork. Everything that we showed on the artwork that I showed on the Tuesday show, that was all generated from the AI that I found last week. So it's been about a week or two.
Yeah, I know. You
generated all that.
You rendered a whole night's worth of art like in less than a week.
Yep, they made a good solid 15-minute video that I could just have, playing in the background. So it's going through a slideshow of that, and I'm adding more all the time. Coming up with new ideas of what to look for. One of the big things with that one is that it's training on the different artists. So knowing, it's expanding my knowledge of art. I mean, I never was that big into. I knew a couple of artists, but I couldn't have named you 10 or 15, let's say, classical artists or sci-fi artists or any of that. But now I've got a list of like 30.
It's like going to an art class for 6 months.
Exactly. And just because all I needed was names to feed, whether it's
or motivation. You needed motivation. Yep. Yeah, a parameter. Like artists, let me find some artists.
And then when we talked about Frazetta, for example, or Frazetta for the Barbarians, like that's in his style. So you start thinking about what would be a picture in that style, what would be a title of a picture in that style, and then feed that to the AI, and that's what you get.
Well, not just that. You think about what makes that style. If you want to understand an artist and the style that they play in, you got to be asking what makes that style. This is why, like with Jason and James, I'm constantly asking what makes this metal. Is it a theme? Is it a sound, approach, and chord construction? I mean, there's so many things that can change something to a different genre.
Exactly. The music transformers. That's the link I just sent there. Was the magenta tensorflow.org/music transformer. That's the one that we were just looking at with the cool look back stuff for the piano.
Well, that's the one I think I'm most interested in. Wow, since 2018. This is fresh. Like last time I looked at this stuff, I've been looking across the last 30 years at this technology, and they are hitting a great stride in the last couple of years.
Absolutely.
The first one with the lyric approach is a close second between this one and that one.
the fact that one was able to like essentially sing like Elvis, sing like Bonamassa, or at least give you something an idea of what it would sound like if they were singing that song. That's pretty damn cool.
It's going to lend to a lot of melody advice. It's like having an Ange on your screen.
Yep. The other one that we looked at was Jukebox. That was the first one. So let me also link that one as well. OpenAI.com/jukebox.
This one reminds me of you remember Chris? Was it Icebox?
Yep. When he had, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, was it Splash or?
I don't recall. I think it was Splash.
I think that's what and that was fascinating. But like this is taking that concept to a vocal synthesizer, lyrical interpreter approach. That's where the AI comes in.
Yep. And again, like a lot of this, I mean, I apologize if it was all a lot of text on the screen and it's all really small and it's all a lot of code and stuff like that and it seems confusing. But again, the main takeaway here is what we can do with this stuff, and the fact that even not knowing half of what is going on in the code, we're still able to work with what this is and get ridiculously cool results from them. And that's the part that really is interesting to me.
Yeah, there's still a little learning curve, but they have simplified Google Collabs, what they're doing, the way that they're allowing you to run a Python compiler in a browser. This does simplify a lot. The reason why a lot of people don't program in Python is because environments are hard to set up. You don't have to with this Collab AI.
They've simplified it down with those collab notebooks. They literally simplified it down to hitting a handful of play buttons. And with the AI art generator last week, you can feed it nothing and just have it generate stuff from scratch, or you can feed it keywords. You can feed it a starting image, a target image, just keywords. You can separate keywords with pipes. Like if you wanted it to make 3 different types of scenes, you could merge all 3. And if they're very different, you just put a separator between them, and it'll give equal weight to each of the 3, and it'll tell you we were talking about the losses.
And that's the other key, knowing that you can inject a couple of parameters at the same time. First, you got to know what the parameters are. So go through the documentation and find out like what your options are, and then piping different options is where you get variety.
And in this case, it's not even so much looking through the instructions for it. It's more the ideas that you want the AI to think about or to use for the image. Now, one thing during that AI art session we did last week, we were talking about when I was generating art, I would see something called losses and something else called loss. And there was the numbers that were in there. And when Jason was generating art, he had losses and he had 3 separate numbers under loss. And I was confused by that at the time. And especially because they were talking about trying to get that losses number down under 0.5, and that tells you that you're on the right track for the AI is really homing in.
Now, was he rendering different than you? What caused that?
It turns out it was the pipes, actually. It was using the pipes, because what he was doing, I had forgotten, but after we talked about that, instead, like for me, I was doing it as when I was feeding in text. I was feeding in text as though it was the title of the picture at the art gallery. So I would do like Barbarians Near Waterfalls by Frank Frazetta. Like that was one phrase that I would put in and then tell the artwork to go. And that was it. With Jason, he would do, if he was doing the same thing, or in this case, like I think he was doing a skull on the ocean, let's say, or a blood ocean, something like that. He would take like blood, pipe, ocean, pipe, and then
so
the name of the
he
artist.
separated the keywords.
Right. So instead of it being a phrase,
the different
that they're
instructions,
trying to look at, he was basically doing blood and ocean and artist, where I was doing a full phrase. So
and
it was different.
Isn't that a lot like when you go to Google, if you actually do use pipes or quotes or single quotes,
you get different results.
Your search
could be more specific.
Machine exactly what you're looking for, and then blend it with some other options.
And in the case of the losses, in this case, with mine, like the loss number and the losses number were the same because I was only looking at one thing. So both numbers would stay the same and they would go down or go up together. With his, the losses were the sum total of the losses of number 1 and number 2 and number 3. So
the multiple instructions.
Weights. Right. So you might have 80% here, 60% here, and 70% here. But it's working with them, and you can see.
So when you saw 3 there, it was because he piped 3 different instructions, and one instruction had less loss.
Yep. Yep, and it was trying to equally weight them, so it's shooting for getting all three of them under
And
that
that's
50%.
the fourth one.
But let's say one of them could have been like one could be penguins, one could be ice, and one could be lava. I mean, two of these things go together, one not so much, right? So if it's trying to make a picture of that, it would probably get lower losses on the penguins and the ice, and higher losses on the lava because it doesn't make as much sense. You know what I mean? To try to fit together, at least in my thinking of how it probably is weighting these things together.
In your thinking like a computer.
Well, I do have to try. I mean, we want to figure out what they're doing. We got to know what they're trying to do.
Oh, I think like a computer.
Exactly.
I'm trying to
Or at
figure
least-
out how to think like a human.
Or at least I know how it's thinking. Like I can see what it's trying to do, and if it's not working, it's like, okay, well, I'm not afraid to try the same thing more than once. Though they say the definition of insanity, trying the same thing and expecting different results. I will try something 4 or 5 times on a computer because the 5th time it's gonna work, and usually it's
Well,
just gonna
and-
raise the eyebrow at the last.
And you're never trying the same thing. Like every
Never.
time you try it, there's a variable that changes.
Yeah.
You don't want to
A-
change a shitload of
the key
variables,
was
but
a variable. Yes.
yes, a variable. That's
You
how
might
you
have 5 things you
troubleshoot.
want to check, but change one, and then change it back, and then change the other one, and change it back. Yes, it's a process of elimination, but don't change 5 things that, yes, it fixed it. Well,
Well,
which one of those 5 things fixed it? You don't know,
yes,
so next time
if
it
you-
happens, you don't know what you did.
And if you're talking to an AI like this and you want to see how it thinks, you got to start small and then build it up with 3 or 4 terms, and then see what you generate. See the evolution.
Exactly. Good stuff. The other thing that was pretty cool about this that I started looking at was in MuseNet. This is, again, the one that we were looking at recently with the one with the further examples, the one with the cool visuals of the examples. That one, they actually did an experimental concert in April of 2019 that they live streamed, yeah, I can say it, live streamed on OpenAI's Twitch channel, where no human, including them, had heard any of the pieces before, and it was a 2-hour concert.
Oh, wow.
Of the songs you're playing. I'm just not going to play 2 hours, obviously, but I just wanted to play a little piece of it just so you could see like what kind of stuff, because they'll tell you like what genre it is in the middle, like in the style of. So here's in the style of like country. I like the visualizer we have there too. Rachmaninoff.
He really is rock for classical music, too.
Yep,
Perfect name.
exactly. These pieces are definitely not failures.
You know what'll be interesting to see as these parameters grow is color parameters mixed with music.
Absolutely. Different hues.
Well, certain notes are like a color to me.
Yep.
I'm not sure
color
what
is-
color they are, but they are
color
like
is
a
a-
color.
What color is a G? A nice happy G.
Green.
Nice. There you
Not
go.
just because it starts with a G, but
Mhm.
I think Ange, if I say any other color for G, she
Oh,
will
this is-
disagree.
This is another one of those maps, but this is the map for the other AI. So this
Oh,
one
for the
is
classical
showing
ones, huh?
for the classical one. Well, not just classical, but I mean, this has over here. You've got Elvis Presley, and Elvis Presley is related to Queen and Beach
Well,
Boys, Fleetwood Mac,
yeah,
Mariah Carey.
you see how it bled into like rock and roll.
Yep,
I
and they
love
come over
these
the
mind
Beatles.
maps. Mind
Yep.
maps was a great way to visualize connections.
Mhm.
I would love to see the history of metal
Mhm.
mind mapped like that.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, from heavy metal in 1970-ish. We'll put Jimmy at the top and say like this was pre-metal, but
Look where they put
everything
Wagner.
after.
Wagner's over here by Queen.
Well, Wagner is actually a good bridge when you look at traditional classical to modern rock. He's the one I would say is the easiest for rockers to assimilate.
Hmm. And what about Nine Inch Nails?
He does a lot of fifths and hard hits.
Similar to Green Day, Madonna, Mariah Carey, and the
It's
Spice Girls.
funny, they got Spice Girls and Madonna. And again, it's a Mariah Carey.
And Bob Marley related to Michael Jackson, Aretha, Madonna, and the Spice Girls. Interesting.
Well, what's really interesting there is Bob Marley bridging all the way to all those other ones, like reggae,
Yeah.
is a lot of the Bob Marley extension.
And actually, that was that other map. Actually, was good for that. Which one was that? I think it was.
We'll have to
This
do a search on genre AI, because I guarantee you somebody out there is programming that too
Mm-hmm.
and mapping all these artists in a way we've never thought of before.
I was trying to find the first example that had the pictures. There we go. This one. Because with this map, it was showing the connections or showing the closeness of where things are, but the way everything was spread out. For reggae in particular, as you were talking about it, we had Shaggy, Sean Paul, Mr. Vegas. They're closer to country and pop and rock, but Ziggy Marley's over there.
And the one thing I'd like to see with this kind of mind map is a timeline.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yes.
something that actually from left to right or up to down, the history of genres.
Now, what I like about this right here is you got Bob Marley, Jimmy Cliff, and Toots and the Mayals all together right there, and that's a nice little cluster. I mean, that's definitely some solid stuff there. Like, I love covering Bob Marley stuff. I love covering Jimmy Cliff stuff. I've heard some really good stuff from Toots and the Mayals, and that's a good Maytals.
You see connected influences there for
Exactly.
like not just a genre, but like a definition of that genre.
Mm-hmm.
Because those clusters under reggae,
Yep.
they are different aspects of reggae.
Exactly. And some are leaning this way, some are leaning that way, a little closer to this style or this
But
person.
those subgenres, as reggae's grown, I mean, reggae is a fascinating genre.
Absolutely. And rock, you got all over the place. The Linkin Park and Kiss and
Yeah,
Van
rock
Halen,
is
like
a
we said
mess.
It's all over. Yeah.
But at the same time, it's a beautiful mess.
And you get soul down at the bottom with Ray Charles, James Brown, Fats Domino. Good
And
stuff. And to me, this is a great place to just, get ideas of people to go, look at. And not that we've heard of all these people, but it's a question of, I haven't heard anything by this person in a while, and just go dive in.
well, and this can help you actually go listen to people you never would have, because you love this artist who's in this cluster, and
Yep.
well, what are these other artists next to it?
Why have I never heard of them? And they're right there. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's the Pandora mentality.
Yeah.
The way their AI worked was to figure out what you liked and then find the closest music rhythmatically, theme wise, genre wise. Pandora's AI was, I think, key to a lot of this happening.
Mm-hmm. Just trying to see if I could find Chopin in here. He's hiding in here somewhere.
Well, the classical is a clusterfuck too. I mean, I am curious as to, like, I see Bach in there, and there's Mozart.
Yeah.
They're all close.
There's Bach
Oh, and
hiding out.
Handel, Handel's.
Yeah.
It's funny, the ones that like really set the modern notation standards
Mm-hmm.
and definition of like what a part can be, like a fugue. Bach invented it.
Mm-hmm. The fugue.
And that's much more of a musical accomplishment than writing any particular song.
Well, I didn't come across Chopin, but I know he's in there.
Oh, Chopin's in there. If he's not, they say I need to get smacked.
Yes, but no, he's in there. Especially because some of the primers were actually like first 8 notes of Chopin's whatever. So,
And when you're looking at the classical, 20th century classical, it really changed. The classical we tend to know and go to school for is the early classical, where music definition was being made. 20th century classical, just like the electronic instruments, changed the definition.
Hmm.
Guys like Stravinsky took all the classical rules and said, I'm going to try something totally different. Let's see if it works.
Now, one of the things that you were mentioning was a timeline, and guess what? They have a timeline down here for the jukebox going back to August 2019.
Oh, it's evolution.
So
Very cool.
There's a couple of examples. We don't have to go through all of them, but we can go through some. And someone specifically, Bob Marley is one of them. Rock and roll, Louis Armstrong. We've got early August piano. We've got late August hints of pop. So
This was them testing their baby out.
exactly. So this is
I
like the first
like it.
ones where they're learning to recreate some piano and some violin. I played some of that already, so let's try that again.
And that must have got them excited as shit.
Exactly.
Like, oh my God, my code just made that.
It's working.
Hints of
It's
pop.
alive.
And then look, it takes till October before they start bringing Marley and rock and roll.
A larger and more diverse data set with labels and genres and artists. Picks up artists and genre styles more consistently.
That's really cool that they
but first
put
we've
this
got the,
timeline up.
Yep, the late August hints of pop. Once again, I started playing it already, so let me back it up.
And this is the one that does lyrical too, right?
Yep. This is where they're like, I'm starting to hear voices. And again, not necessarily discernible as a specific style, but it's music. and
It's learning.
fun, and it's learning exactly. So now we're gonna do Bob third. We're gonna do Louis Armstrong first of these three, and then rock and roll, and then Bob Marley.
And actually, Louis starts. This is the real beginning of rock.
With the vintage sound.
I love his sound.
I think what like around the night, it meant that winning of you.
He must have been super excited.
Then you tell me, God, that you found me. I can imagine.
Because that's like undeniably in the vocal style that they're looking for there.
Oh,
That's awesome.
absolutely.
And just that whole vintage sound was unexpected to me. I was expecting it to basically be super clean, whatever, but it knows what it's supposed to sound like, because it knows what that whole library of the stuff that it knows by Louis Jordan sounds
And
like.
I would imagine these AIs aren't just going to be listening for sound patches and lyric techniques.
It's all
They'll
about
be
the
listening, for recording style. It's like making a video that you want to look like it was made in the 70s.
Yep.
You run a filter on it.
And if you got the little record pops in there, so it sounds like you're playing it on an old record player, yeah, absolutely.
That's something an AI should know.
Yep. Getting all those little details, just like they should be. Now, rock and roll. I think I'm hearing T-Rex there. What do you think?
I was going to say their choice of rock and roll, I mean, you have like 50, 60 years of AI to suck up there.
Yep. So it would be less likely to sound just like the latest Pop 40 hit, but more to sound like the conglomeration of a lot of stuff.
That was 80s style rock and roll, give or
Think
take.
of the happy medium. Now, how about Bob Marley?
And that would be a parameter. in rock. Like,
you should have a slider for the timeline. You know, about
Yeah.
this time of rock.
first you have to establish the timeline. When did rock start, and where are we at now?
Yep, and there are disagreements about that, but just coming up with
Yes.
something and just use it.
A
Don't have to argue about it,
consensus.
but just come up with a consensus
Right.
and stick with it. All right, so Bob Marley. Sorry. I mean, I could listen to that all night.
And that's the one with the lyrical generation, right? They're
Yep.
using his voice tone. That sounded like fucking Marley.
Exactly. And now they scale it up. Now we're in January 2020 now. That was October 2019 for the Marley. Now we're
They
all the way up
must
to
have
January.
been so stoked after that
Exactly.
test. Like, oh my
Exactly.
God, he's alive again.
Now they scaled it up from 22K to 44 kilohertz for higher quality. They also scaled the top level from 1B to 5B, captured the increased information, better quality, clear singing, long-range coherence. That was the big one, the long-range coherence, because this is the one that was talking about being able to keep the song coherent to the primer throughout and even returning to a theme, things like that. So like this would be early January in the style of hip-hop and rap.
Get the fuck out of here.
I mean, I can't usually tell the lyrics in some of these songs anyway, so I mean, right? That sounded
Some
pretty freaking
of
amazing
you,
to me.
some of you rappers out there might worry about your jobs. If a machine can make rap like that, you're gonna have to up your game.
Start working with the stuff. You start working with these tools because it generates that, and then you can throw your own bars on top of that. I mean, that's what I'm looking at, right?
Well, what's really cool is setting timing there with lyrics.
Yes,
That is what rap is.
It's doing half of the hard job for you. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Now from rap to Sinatra. How about that?
See, there you have a tone challenge.
Yep.
And then he reaches to test. Bella, I'm test. See the bleb.
See the blurbs.
They really taught this fucker Sinatra.
One we
A lot of examples of that one.
Oh, Satan, dream was here one.
Frank sounds a little drunk. I think he had a little too much to drink. But definitely capturing that tone. for sure. And the
That's
style.
Frank.
Now how about David Bowie?
Yeah, that's the one I like. He has a very diverse tone.
And any
Which-
Bowie song that you've heard, you probably recognize as Bowie right away, right?
Which should help the AI. A singer
Exactly.
where
Distinctive,
the AI has a lot of different variety from should actually make that singer better
Exactly.
for the AI.
Let's see how he does.
We're taking the claim on where we and come from the bed.
Thin white puke.
Boil the liquors, could burn a bridge. The Vinci. The key.
Obviously nonsense words, but sounding very cool.
And very much like Bowie.
Yep, in the style of, for sure. Now this one is
See, and that's like the keywords on your graphic AI.
exactly just
As
feed it a couple
or
things. Yep, you just feed it a couple little priming things and just let it go from there. This one is they said prime it with 12 seconds of Despacito.
wow, and they were getting this in 2020 January.
This was January 2020. Yep.
Sabes que ya llevo un rato mirándote.
Nothing.
Tengo que bailar contigo hoy. Chihuahua. Vi que tu mirada británico fue tu goyara de Korea. Cambiar. Special wing and the world. Your thoughts are skinny. The good man. Say that. To the face. This is bad.
That's catchy as hell. Very well done. And that was just 12 seconds of Despacito that it started with, and then, like I said, just kicked off. Even not English, but identifiably not English, but identifiably not language at all. But definitely sounded like Spanish for sure.
Look at what they're starting to change. They're generating following 12 seconds of priming.
Yep.
They're starting to go from in the style of to piping.
To start with this. Yep. And then February 2020, they trained models conditioned on lyrics to incorporate further conditioning. Unaligned lyrics, so it has to learn alignment and pronunciation as well as singing. This is the part that I like because it's not we had to teach it these things. It had to learn them, and that's
And
the important
they're
part.
also doing mixing, like with the January. They're focusing on musical quality, clear singing, mixing techniques, not just AI.
Exactly. And then we're back to Frank. See your face again.
I wanna treat. I wanted to see your face again, like your sunlight by this morning.
Definitely still not recognizable lyrics, but clearer in terms of the vocal style, sounding more like words or more like complete thoughts almost.
And sounding more like the artist.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, from what we heard way earlier, they had Frank down by the time they got that example.
Yeah. And then when it got to the ones where it's actually thinking about the different spots of the lyrics and, deciding, oh, do those, do these, jump to this section, jump to that section, that's pretty cool too. But now the last one here is February of 2020 in the style of Kylie Minogue, Count Every Minute. And again, very cool. Recognizable style.
And again, recognizable recording technique for her style. Because did you not hear that second track? Like there was a second vocal track in there, emphasizing every now certain parts. That's kind of Kylie's
signature move.
Studio sound.
Yep.
On many songs.
So Sony, you ask for a timeline, you get timeline.
This AI is
badass.
badass and looking at multiple layers. It is looking like an audio engineer as much as a lyricist. Um,
As
we
much as
didn't
an
really see
instrumentalist.
what it really does instrumental so much, but if
But
they're
that's out there.
pumping in wave files and getting the lyrics and the mixing AI to do what it's doing, I'm already impressed.
Now the other thing was, this is the one I'm pretty sure that had the link at the bottom saying, if you'd like to join, and work with us
Yes.
with the experiments. I went ahead and did that. So let me just make sure this is the one, because I would encourage anyone to do the same. I just did this. There it is. Creative collaborator sign up right here on the page, right before that timeline. So if you're on that page right before the timeline, creative collaborator sign up, and it's just, you go in and put your info in, what industry you work in, why are you interested in collaborating with us, who you're affiliated with.
I would like to teach
easy
this
stuff.
fucking computer.
Yeah. And I mentioned that that I work with BandLab, and we have, and we do this tech show every week and all that. So we'll see if they're interested, and maybe they will be. Who knows? But that's easy enough to get there. If you are interested in this stuff, like I am, just dive right in, check it out. I mean, you can play with it without signing up for it like that. That's the beauty of this stuff, is that they've given us the Google Collabs to actually just literally go right in. That was what we were doing over
And
here.
this is a
They
big
do-
this is a big part of future songwriting and learning.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like, just the guy who liked the song that the AI came up with, and he taught it to himself. I mean, that's a perfect example where, that was a song that did not exist and would not have existed till the AI did it. Once the AI did it, a human liked it, a human decided to play it, and now it's a new song that a human can play. I like that.
I'm happy to take suggestions from my computer.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many people there, whether it's writer's block or unmotivated or not sure which way to go with something, you have a nugget of an idea. I mean, you can feed it to the AI and see what it thinks about it. And you can
Sometimes
get 10
that's
different
exactly, yeah, a part change. That's
Yeah.
been my biggest struggle going back to the 90s. I know when I want to change. I know when I want a different part. I don't always know where I want to go.
Or what would be appropriate. And that's where, again, those chord substitutions we talked about at one point, because there are rules about chord substitutions, but there's also a lot of flexibility and a lot of freedom. I mean, you can
And
throw the
that's
rules out the window.
that's what I do to try to find like where I want to go. Oh, is it this chord or this variation? You have to flesh them out and feel them out. A little AI help can sometimes, I think, save me a shitload of time if it says, "Hey, what do you think of this?"
Mm-hmm. I'm just running down through the Google Collab one more time. It basically, if you're disconnected or if you're AFK from it for a little while or you're away from it, you need
Times
to
out.
reconnect. It times out, because they also don't want you to leave it sitting timed out, because other people want the resources, so I shouldn't leave it. That's my bad.
Yeah,
But I
and
was,
most browsers will time. I mean, in the old days, they used to time out like every minute. Now you got these like 30-minute sessions.
and then here's generating piano from scratch just after I literally only had to click. I mean, there's all these warnings and all this other environment setup stuff, but it was literally come to number 1, press play. Wait till it finished. Or scroll down, number 2, press play. Number 3, press play. And now
See,
we're
they
down to
really have
generate from
simplified.
scratch. So they've simplified it down to where, I mean, I don't have to know what the code is doing to do it, which is awesome.
Or install anything to do it.
Or install anything, because this is all happening on their computing resources over there. With this,
reason-
it tells you about the RAM and the disk that you're connecting to on the compute engine.
A lot of people don't program because setting up an environment to do it is a bitch.
Yeah. And this takes
More
a
than
lot of that
learning
out
the
of there.
code.
And since it's a collab, you can be working on this with other people. Other people can be, working into it. I mean, oh, here we go. Freshly generated from scratch piano performance. I like it. It's got a nice.
How long
little-
did that take?
That was about a
Less
minute.
than a minute?
Yeah, under a minute. And that's pretty cool. So let's see what they got. 30 seconds clip. So
Compared to your rendering times that you've watched,
yeah.
that's pretty impressive.
what I like there is that there's definitely a theme. There's definitely returns to the theme as it's going through it, but the theme is kind of a little wonky. It's not quite, what I would expect it to be, but it's staying true to it. So it's basically saying, here's that theme, and I'm going to keep playing off of that theme. I like that. Very
It's
cool.
almost like it puts some human quantizing into its
Yeah.
choice.
And of course, now that it's generated and that was under a minute, oh, you mentioned the rendering times on the on that Google collab. I went ahead and I signed up for the next level up from the free one.
Oh, that
And
works across projects?
well, I don't think it works across projects. That was for the art one. So this one, I think I'm still connected to the original. Like this would be the free one that I'm connected to now. Fast render time. But when you're talking about the art render times, when I had long render times on the art, it was because I was not connecting to one of the GPUs on their end. It was a busy time, I guess. So I was not connected to a GPU, and it was taking multiple minutes per render. But once I started doing it this way, I was literally getting 1 second per iteration. So
This is what I was talking about the other night.
50 seconds per image. Yeah.
Cloud rendering services. If your Google Collab account that you're willing to subscribe to allows you to render faster here, render faster there, that kind of service is going to be a popular. People are going to want to render AI like this.
And you were also mentioning that people can also be, not donating, but essentially assigning their resources to the project as well. In some
Yes,
ways.
there's some cryptocurrencies that actually encourage people to share hard drive space, computer processing, memory, and they get rewarded in a coin.
Yep. And I could see that being a model for this type of thing.
That's
as
how
well.
people are going to make a living sometimes in the future with a computer that's doing nothing for 10 hours.
See, your computer's asking you, are you still there? Because this is for interactive use. So they're saying, I am not a robot.
I'm going to write a song called I'm Not a Robot. And I hope I never get a CAPTCHA again after.
There you go. Now, you can also choose a priming sequence. And again, this is where we could say a C major scale, or we could say an arpeggio, or you can upload your own. And this is where, again, when you say upload your own, and it's got a maximum time for the primer, you can set it as long as you want. You can go up to, looks like 2 minutes, but it defaults to 20 seconds of primer. So if any 20 seconds I want,
Well,
I can just feed to the thing.
And a primer would be like a theme.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where, again, they used, the examples they gave were the C major arpeggio, a C major scale, or Clair de Lune. So if we say Clair de Lune, it'll take that, bring the
Now,
first beginning.
Clair
of
de
this.
Lune, isn't that like a song?
Yep.
Or is
exactly.
that a style?
They were
It's a
it's
song,
songs.
right?
So it should be this right here. So it's the first 6.5, 7 seconds of Clair de Lune that they want to use as a primer. And then if we use that and say generate continuation, it's going to use that as the start, because the first time you can see the beginning there, that was actually the C major scale that we used and did a continuation. So that was the piece that we got last time. This time it's going to generate a continuation based on the Clair de
Oh,
Lune.
and this is like using the pipes. Like
Yep, exactly.
Extend off of this thought.
Yep, use this as a basis, and then it's going to try to return to the theme or utilize the theme or utilize stylistic choices that it detects from within this.
It even knows you did it 1 hour ago. Ooh, they're
Yeah.
keeping track of shit.
They want to know, yeah. And
Well,
then-
it's AI. Like AI is gonna know.
exactly. And then you saw how fast that rendered, and that's a 41 second generated clip based on that 6 second, 7 second performance. And you can see the primer is actually a different color in the graph at the bottom there.
It
It's like
rendered
blue
in
versus
about
red.
half the time.
Yeah,
in about
exactly.
20 seconds.
Yep. And this is what it came up with.
Now, not a lot of variation. That's the most. The bass choices. Now it's thinking.
Mm-hmm. Resolution.
It really is interesting to see a baby computer learning music. That's what it feels
Taking
like.
its first steps, it does.
Yeah. I
And
feel
it's
like
like,
I'm watching a 4-year-old.
Good job. And then you can download the continuation as MIDI right there, or you can either download just the continuation or the primer and the generated continuation. Just really cool stuff. We are pushing 1245 though, so I have a feeling.
That's the
And
part of the
it's getting
future
tired.
I'm not scared of. Yeah, I think she went into pumpkin mode.
Could well be.
I only know when she puts the pumpkin mask on.
Yep. And she wasn't on camera, so I didn't see.
Oh, she
here's
probably
another one
was
where
in the back. She was testing that shit earlier.
Yep. And this is where we could again generate. You could choose your own melody. You could upload your own MIDI file, and you can just choose a file to send, and do it that way.
Well,
Again,
Melody AI, like of all these AIs we've seen tonight,
Mhm.
I could see a whole AI just focused on melody. This one's kind of close.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing is by having them focus on different sections, like you could have an AI that's just focused on rhythm and just focused on just listening to drums and listening to percussion and
One
figuring it out.
aspect of music
Focusing
making.
on it. Yep.
Like
have a
drum,
team of 'em.
percussion.
Yeah.
There's several drum AIs. Like that actually goes back to the late 90s and early 2000s. Drum machines started making drum AI. Roland, 94-ish, really kicked that in.
Mm-hmm.
But now you see drum AI where percussion styles learning from genres and saying, give me Hungarian reggae. Very
My
much
favorite.
possible.
That's the one I give to cousin Jeff, and he makes it happen every time.
That's the
Hungarian
ultimate
reggae,
test.
or what else? Like Latin pop. I mean, that would be an example anyway. But yeah, just
Well-
take two styles: polka fusion metal, whatever, and he'll
Metal
get you something
polka.
that sounds like it. Yeah.
Metal polka
Yep.
or polka metal. And if
Because
I
there are
do
things
them
that
in
define
different
polka, yeah.
order, if I do them in a different order, the
get
AI
different
should
weights.
focus more on the polka and
Yep.
then metalize it.
Yep. Or in this case, because of the fact that it was basically saying equal weights. When you do divide like that, you do the pipes. If you put in 3 or 4 things, it's trying to do equal weights across. But again, it'll vary the weights based on which ones make more sense to use together, or be more confused and have higher losses on the ones where it doesn't make as much sense, or you're trying to shoehorn something in that doesn't fit.
And that's where you would confuse an AI. Like even today's AI is not. Today's AI is like a 4-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
It is learning to learn. And it has us as programmers, and we're still figuring this shit out.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Good stuff, though. Whether it's the melodies here and downloading as MIDI or using the primers. Again, we could use the stuff that we were doing on BandLab as Song Starter. We did that a couple weeks ago, going over the Song Starter thing they have, where it gives you little nuggets of songs, and you can do all
Taking
kinds
that
of stuff with that.
song starter nugget here.
Yep. And that's just, that I basically made 20 or 30 of those song starter nuggets when we were going over that day. And I could literally take any one of those, take several pieces of it, because the one is definitely a melody line. Others that could be used as a melody line, like some of the bass lines even. If it's a busier bass line, that could easily be used as a melody line also as a primer. So I could take, any couple of things from there, send them over, prime it up, and check it out.
What would be so cool, BandLab, if you're listening, integrate with these AIs, and when I do something on your song starter, let me save it somewhere where I can feed it through this. You guys will bridge some of this. And then they don't have to do the heavy lifting. BandLab does not have to reinvent this wheel. They need to incorporate with this wheel.
Yep.
Because there's 3 engines we looked at tonight. All 3 of those engines should be a place for you to feed some of your BandLab into to see where it goes.
Indeed. Just giving everybody the link to DM Ange with tracks for later, for future shows. Always looking for tracks. Send them to Angify, and she will check them out.
Or she'll make me.
Or she'll make Tony, that's right. Or me, for that matter. I mean, we all chip in at the listening, but we all love it. So today we did go over Jukebox. Was one that's openai.com/blog/jukebox. That was the one that we were just looking at a second ago. Very cool stuff there. You got the papers right here. You got the code right here.
Lyrics
I love the fact
focused.
that so much of this is lyrics focused.
Vocalist focused. Yep. Sounding like Bob Marley.
Allowing
and
to watch
Frank.
and see what it's paying attention to at any given moment when it's going through the different stuff. Definitely excellent. There's also
hopefully it will eventually learn metal.
Yep.
I think it will eventually learn metal.
Oh, what about alternative metal in the style of Disturbed? That was really good.
That was really, really good. And interesting, the other metal example, it had a tough time with the part
Yeah.
changes. With
Yep.
Disturbed's style, which actually is much easier for an AI to assimilate, it did a fucking killer job there.
Now, this was a different spot where if you see up here under the curated samples, the ones we were looking at before were unseen lyrics, so it was basically generating the vocal stuff without seeing actual lyrics. These are re-renditions that we're looking at now, which was when conditioned on lyrics seen during training, Jukebox produces songs very different from the original songs it was trained on. So this is where I guess it was trained more on the lyrics. So
With
they
that
use-
one, it picked up the hits much more. Disturbed's hits are more like traditional than progressive metal. They are very much on the measure. The AI had no problem.
I am curious to see what it does with Ella Fitzgerald. I mean, that's going to be distinctive, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much like progressive metal for jazz.
Is it a costly? Oh, curious shot. Is it the pictures through? Oh, living mine. Is it a country?
And again, the scratchy feel.
This feeling of joy. Or is it I feel it, the real truth?
That is impressive. Most impressive.
Yeah, did you hear how long that held that note?
Yeah.
Dude, that's a little scary that's a computer.
Exactly.
I mean, not totally scary, but
I know what you mean.
freaky.
Yep. And they have, let's see. So those are re-renditions, right? So we have Blues Rock. We got another Bonamassa. We'll see how he does there. I mean, that is almost scary. That is really good. It had his voice nailed.
Very authentic.
Excellent. Now they had, that was re-renditions. They also had completions where it was actually, they give 12 seconds of audio to condition the song, and then it tries to complete the rest in the style. So you give it 12 seconds of something, and then you tell it a style, and it goes from there. So you can blend polyrhythms and hip-hop in a genre-bending way.
Yes, this is where the bending starts to happen.
Yep. Oh, God. Pop in the style of Rick Astley.
Never gonna give.
Gotta
Actually,
find out, yep.
Rick Astley should be metal.
We're no strangers to love.
That's the variation.
Never gonna give you up, never gonna let you down, never gonna run around and be the fool. Never gonna make you cry, never gonna stay alive.
So I just got the Rickroll, everybody. I love it.
That's the variation. Again,
yeah.
fascinating.
Yep.
We
And then
can
again,
write-
the way it was having issues with the timing there too, because it wasn't trying to make it the exact song. It was trying to go from the words, and they definitely don't fit the way they're supposed to.
That's still learning. I mean, technically,
Exactly.
this is 2 years old.
And that's great.
I feel like it's a 4-year-old, but it's really only 2.
Yeah. I remember back when it was only one. So cute.
Singing Frank Sinatra ish.
Ish. Yeah, ish. How about in the style of Tupac?
See, they're introducing cooler styles.
Yep. That's pretty damn good.
They turned Tupac into a British rapper.
And they had a second one in the style of Tupac.
And that's actually becoming a very popular sound. I'm
is.
loving British rap. I've been
Yep.
hearing a lot more of it the last couple of months.
Mm-hmm. And that was originally performed by Mos Def. Here's hip hop in the style of Tupac. Same start, different result.
Funny how the AI interprets rap.
Last time it skipped the whole first half of the song. There it was.
I'm trapped in between the lines. I escape when I'm finished divine. When you make me really throw the line, I'm going to set the horse and hard to see. I can hear it was sincere. It's a game of corruption and time. Freedom, problem, charms of emotion to run toward your heart. I reckon you got to pass through 12 for the killer break. While I'm just trips, the legislation and the decision. The powers are that break, avoiding the fall that they love in the gut. I slip, my ability.
And it's got great timing.
It does, yeah. It did much better that time. I mean, the first time again, it skipped the whole first half of the song and jumped right to like halfway down. But even so, I mean, again, it's not about doing it all start to finish. It's about playing it, something cool and new in the style. So yeah, definitely.
Not only does it have great timing, it goes into the groove like rappers can learn from this shit.
Absolutely.
I think it actually has an easier time with the rap than it does with like the metal and the rock.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's more percussive vocally, and that AI lyrically is thinking like percussively.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. And it's got a few different examples too. I mean, we got Eagles for rock. We got Bruno Mars for pop. We got Stevie Wonder R&B. We already did the Rick Astley because we had the Rick roll everybody.
Yeah, looking at the artists that they're feeding into it now, like think about how this thing is going to grow as it learns the history of music.
Yeah, exactly. And it's already had such a great primer already. And then, not only that, but it's just going to keep getting better over time because we're going to keep feeding it into more music as we make more music.
And you're going to be able to learn more about what music is. This is what the world needs in order to collect all of what music is in a way for tomorrow's little ones to hear it all and make something new.
Like pop in the style of Bruno Mars.
gotta kiss
Bruno
myself.
Mars is pop.
I'm too hot.
I don't get too.
Call the police and the fireman. I'm too hot. Make a dragon wanna retire, man. I'm too hot.
Nailed that.
In my lane, you know who I am. I'm too hot. If I'm myself, I wanna break it down, girls.
Nice.
See, and Bruno's got to be easy for it to, as far as like pop styles, and again, learning the rap, and his style does hit on the beats very naturally. So the AI understands his style.
Indeed.
How they've like synthesized his voice.
And again, these are the ones that probably fed it the first 12 seconds. So the first 12 seconds probably was him. And then from there. But same thing with the Eagles. Like right here, it's probably going to start with the first 12 seconds of them. But then it'll jump into what the AI generates to continue the song from there with whatever they told it. Because this was just, they told it, they started with something and then they told it rock in the style of Eagles to go from there.
You almost can't tell the transition on some of these.
Yeah. That's the
I said, I had to stop. But you still didn't go. I had the mission there.
totally changed that song.
This could be heaven, this could be hell. Everyone's could be hell.
See, now you can hear the variation.
Exactly.
You can hear the variation, but the vocals that are being sung there, I can't hear the difference from what it's doing for the voice.
Yeah, it's crazy. The fact that it was, I think it's because it was pretty sure about what words it wanted to go to. Like if the AI, when it's kind of on the fence and kind of fading this way or that way, like it has more trouble like really dialing in on it. But it sounded like in this case, it was just like, boom, I'm doing that line. And it decided and it went with it.
And it's got good samples of Don Henley.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
They have
That's
a last
the
category called fun songs, which I mean, you gotta look at the fun songs, right? Let's see what that's all about.
It's actually why I do all this shit.
Frank Sinatra and Ella Fitzgerald. Yeah, country with Alan Jackson.
Oh, wow.
hip-hop with Kanye.
Kids music in the style of verb pipe.
Yeah, that's a good choice.
I like their thinking.
Yeah. They sample a duet, popular song lyrics, songs about deep learning, and children's music.
And children's music is kind of a genre. Like
And in the style of verb pipe is definitely an interesting mashup there, yeah.
all this shit I've been watching on Nick like the last couple of months. There's a approach to making music for kid shows.
Are you watching that before nap time or after nap time?
Both. 9 a.m. and then 2 p.m.
Nice. The double header. Let's see what they do with the verb pipe. I like the lyrics already.
I know, I've thought of that. Why is it a hamburger?
Why do we call it a hamburger if there's no ham in it?
Drive till we tired in a hot town. There's no dog do. I don't even care 'cause I'm so having that. You may break it, and that's it, how should be. It doesn't matter, that's only when she's ready. And I look pretty for kids and oh, there, don't fuck there's a ring that kind of spot. I'm banging on you once, so don't tear it up. Wow.
Why do we call it bacon if you ain't baking it? There's some good questions in here.
The philosophy of food.
Indeed.
Oh, that was a lot of fun.
Yes, indeed. Good stuff. I think we're
And-
done, right?
AI is going to be like a constant theme.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
Oh, Angie's drawing board. Is that a little pile of turd or is that a fire? It looks like a warm turd.
It is hard to say, right? But yes, I think we're done there, right? We can stop the recording. I think we stopped streaming a little while ago already. But yeah, good stuff all around. We could do a little wrap up if you want, but the main thing was that we pretty much covered a lot of ground for all the different AIs, and we got a lot of ground more to cover on all of them. We can do
Why?
lots of examples on all this stuff.
And you know more are coming. Like this is not something that's old and done. This is something that is just beginning.
Yep, it's in its infancy, and that's what's awesome about it, getting in on the ground floor.
I want to be a part of it. At least
me
some
too.
of those AIs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, just the artwork. I mean, I saw that for 5 minutes, and I was like, yes, I am definitely in, because that is one that I could see. I mean, I've already gotten more worth out of it than it cost in the first place, just from what I generated last week. And I mean, I still have it for going forward. So it's just.
And that cost might get translated into a service in the future.
Yeah, yeah.
The whole source management thing. People will pay